Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Naruto. I survive in the land of blood mist and Terumi is my fiance. Chapter 1. Water Country. Mist Village. More than 100 boys and girls stood in line at the ninja school training ground. At the front of the team, 5 tall adult ninjas from Mist Village, wearing gray-brown vests and ninja forehead protectors, stood facing the boys. In the middle of the 5 adult ninjas was the head teacher of the ninja class, Samihama Ryoma. There was a centipede scar on his face that extended from the center of his eyebrows to the right corner of his mouth. With his nearly 1.9 meter tall stature and iceberg-like face, he gave people a hideous and terrifying feeling. Samihama Ryoma closed the scroll in his hand and put it down, looking at the students standing in line, and smiled. Okay, the groups are complete. Do you know your exam opponents? Samihama Ryoma smiled and spoke softly, but his hideous image made people feel unfriendly. Understood. The candidates responded to the words of head teacher Samihama Ryoma in unison. Samihama Ryoma looked at the students in front of him, his mouth corners curved more and more, even revealing his sharp teeth like a shark. 3 years of teaching, I am very reluctant to leave you. However, in our Kurigakure, there is no need for trash to live. So, this exam competition is different from usual. Although Samihama Ryoma's words were soft, the more than 100 candidates present could hear Samihama's words. Samihama Ryoma paused slightly, slowly put away his ugly smile, and continued with a little seriousness. I guess you have heard more or less about the content of the graduation exam. I tell you, that's not a rumor. For this exam, you need to kill your opponent. After Samihama Ryoma finished speaking, his expression was stern, and he exuded a strong murderous aura. The candidates were shocked by the words and suppressed by the murderous aura of their teacher Samihama Ryoma, and many candidates began to tremble. Teacher, how can you? The trembling examinees did not lose their consciences. Many students asked in a low voice or looked around. Samihama Ryoma looked solemn and silent. His originally gentle eyes now burst out with strong murderous intent, oppressing these ninja rookies. At the end of the examinee team, a brown short-haired boy looked terrified. His left hand trembled as he patted the black long-haired, waist-length, white-faced boy on the left, trembling. Woo, Wuxin, my opponent, is you. Will you kill me? Wuxin, 9 years old, black hair and black pupils, the top of this year's graduates, has a long-standing reputation and is known as the prodigy of the hidden mist. Wuxin's handsome and fair face frowned slightly at this moment. The murderous oppression of the senior ninja Samihama Ryoma seemed to be mainly aimed at Wuxin's position in the back row. Takumi, we are best friends. You know, I would never do such a thing. Under the pressure of the Jonin's momentum, Wuxin was still able to remain calm and comfort his friend Takumi. Really, Wuxin. Takumi was still trembling, but with Wuxin's comfort, he felt a little better. Wuxin turned his cheek and looked at Takumi on his right, showing a sunny and warm smile, and whispered. Of course, you don't know what I am like. Takumi stared at Wuxin's warm face in a daze. Wuxin's kind smile and warm words completely calmed Takumi's nervousness. Takumi fell into silence, turned his head, as if he didn't want Wuxin to see his embarrassment, and slowly raised his right hand. Samihama Ryoma looked at these students who were trembling under the pressure of his murderous aura, and glanced at several outstanding students he paid attention to. Zabuza, Momochi and Mushin were all calm and composed. Samihama Ryoma could not help but nodded slightly. When Samihama Ryoma secretly observed the postures of Zabuza, Momochi and Mushin, he noticed that Mitsui Takumi next to Mushin raised his right hand. Samihama Ryoma transferred the murderous aura that oppressed Mushin to Mitsui Takumi. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Mitsui Takumi was trembling all over, but still raised his right hand. Samihama Ryoma was a little surprised and said, Mitsui Takumi, speak. Samihama Ryoma's words were as cold as winter. Mitsui Takumi was trembling, but his face was a little red. Samihama Ryoma understood that this was caused by the secretion of adrenaline due to excitement. Trembling is not necessarily fear, but also excitement and anger. Teacher Ryoma, why should we do this? We are all companions. Why do we have to kill each other? As Ryoma Samihama expected, Mitsui Takumi loudly questioned the purpose of the exam. Ryoma Samihama showed a smile that was uglier than crying. He chuckled. Hee. Why? Swoosh. There was a sonic boom in the field, and Samihama Ryoma, who was in front of the team, disappeared from the spot and instantly appeared behind Mitsui Takumi, who was at the back of the team. What a fast instant body technique. Is this a Jonin? Wuxin noticed Samihama Ryoma behind him and exclaimed in his heart. Before Mitsui Takumi could react, Samihama grabbed him by the collar and lifted him up like a chicken, twisting his waist and spinning him to smash him down behind him. Boom. The ground cracked, and Mitsui Takumi was grabbed by the collar of his upper body by the class teacher, and his lower body legs were rolled up like shrimps, and blood spurted out of his mouth. Samihama Ryoma let Mitsui Takumi's blood spray on him. The centipede scar on his face and the blood on his face made him look like a demon in the world. Samihama Ryoma made a seal with his hands, disappeared, and returned to the front of the team, allowing the students to admire his bloody face. Why? Ha! The Hidden Mist Village is an island country with scarce resources. In this country, people without value have no need to live. Giving up the exam is equivalent to failure, and the result is the same. The only difference is that you are killed by your classmates, or by me. Now, does anyone have any questions? Samihama Ryoma's image is hideous and terrifying, and his words are even more cruel. His words have caused different degrees of damage to the students' bodies and minds, and no one dared to ask again. Takumi. Wuxin, who was at the end of the team, squatted down, helped Takumi up, and gently called his friend's name. The impact of this scene once again refreshed Wuxin's understanding of the Hidden Mist Village. Wuxin has been reborn in Kurigakure for 9 years. With the mature soul of an adult, he has been practicing ninjutsu since childhood and has earned the reputation of a Kurigakure prodigy. Among this year's candidates, Wuxin is a unique genius. Although Wuxin knows that the Kurigakure graduation exam is cruel and requires killing each other, he is also prepared, but he never expected that the opponent arranged by the teacher would be Mitsui Takumi. Mitsui Takumi, Wuxin's neighbor, a companion who grew up together, went to school together at the ninja school, attended classes together, and went home together. Wuxin's parents are both ninjas, and they are often away from home for a long time on missions. Takumi's parents are catering merchants in the village and often take care of Wuxin, so the relationship between the two is very good. Most of the time, the graduation exams of Kurigakure are fought between classmates. Because the friendship between classmates is generally very deep, the ninja school often starts from this aspect. Wuxin has prepared to kill his deskmate, but he didn't expect that the opponent arranged by the teachers for him was not his deskmate, but Mitsui Takumi. Although Wuxin has lived in this world for 9 years, he actually lived another 9 years in his previous life. Wuxin's heart cannot accept killing his friend. At the same time, Wuxin also understands that deliberately alienating Mitsui Takumi in the 3 years at the ninja school has not worked. Because of his genius, he has received special attention from the Kurigakure village, and his opponent is specially arranged. Wuxin, I'm fine. Takumi stood up with the help of Wuxin. Takumi was thrown by the teacher Samihama Ryoma, and his chin was stained with blood. He looked very miserable. Takumi. Wuxin looked at Mitsui Takumi with a complicated look. Wuxin knew that Mitsui Takumi's dream was to change the status of civilians and become a Kurigakure ninja. After Samihama Ryoma finished his questioning, the field was silent. In view of Takumi's fate, no one dared to respond. The silent atmosphere in the field gradually became depressing. Samihama Ryoma took out a pocket watch from his vest slowly, opened the cover of the pocket watch and looked at the time, and said coldly, "Since there is no objection, then the 58 groups of candidates will go to the corresponding training grounds for competition according to the previous division, and the examination time will be 1 hour. As your teacher, I emphasize again that the loser of this exam has only one ending, that is, death." When Samihama Ryoma said the last word of death, he exuded a fierce murderous aura again. At the same time, the 4 examiners beside him also cooperated to exude the murderous aura of elite ninjas. For a moment, the majestic murderous aura swept all the candidates on the field. Under the fierce murderous aura, many candidates suddenly looked sluggish, and many of them even swallowed their saliva uncontrollably. Seeing that the coercion, oppression and teasing were almost over, Samihama Ryoma waved his hand and said, "The exam begins." As soon as the words fell, the candidates jumped away from their original positions as if they had received a pardon. The 5 teachers said nothing and watched the candidates leave quietly. After a while, a Chunin teacher on the right side of Samihama Ryoma asked softly. Ryoma-sama, why don't you let Wuxin and Momochi Zabuza face off? They are the 2 best people in the class. In the usual competitions, they are always evenly matched. The graduation exam should be able to determine the winner, right? When Samihama Ryoma heard his colleague's question, he did not answer immediately. After a slight silence, he said softly. Wuxin and Momochi Zabuza are not close friends. Besides, the selection of genin is not to select the best 1 or 2 genin, but to select a group of excellent ninjas. Wuxin and Momochi Zabuza are both rare geniuses, and they are also descendants of well-known ninjas in the village. Mizukage-sama is also paying attention to them. The purpose of the graduation exam is to let students cut off their ties and understand the true meaning of ninjas. Samihama Ryoma paused for a moment, and then said with a complicated expression. It's not that they died meaninglessly. Another Chunin teacher on the left heard Samihama Ryoma's words, and a trace of embarrassment appeared on his face, and he whispered. I see, to be honest, even I often feel pressure from Zabuza, Momochi and Mushin. Sir Ryoma, did you hurt Mitsui Takumi in order to recruit Mushin in the future? Samihama Ryoma's expression became serious after hearing the words, and he turned his head to look at the ninja who asked the question, and said coldly. No, I didn't hurt Mitsui Takumi on purpose. Takumi just looked seriously injured, but he was actually not injured. Although I admire Mushin, I will never deliberately favor him. This is the ethics of a teacher. After all, in this graduation exam, the candidates have to pay with their lives. Samihama Ryoma's voice became lower and lower at the end. A-17 training ground. Wuxin supported Mitsui Takumi and slowly put him on the ground. Takumi, how are you? Can you hold on? Mitsui Takumi was severely injured by the teacher Samihama Ryoma before. The blood flowing from the corners of his mouth dyed his chin red, and he looked very miserable. Mitsui Takumi put his hands on his chest and rubbed the place where he was grabbed by the teacher Samihama Ryoma before. I'm fine, cough cough. Wuxin, kill me. In this exam, only one of us can survive. I'm not your opponent. Wuxin, take care of my parents for me. Takumi's eyes were scattered, his expression became more and more listless, and he responded to Wuxin softly, telling his last words. Wuxin looked at Mitsui Takumi's miserable state, listened to his last words, frowned, and said in a deep voice. Takumi, I said, I will never do this. Believe me, there is a way to pass this exam without dying. You know Momochi Zabuza, he. Puff. Wuxin's words suddenly stopped, his expression was dull, and he slowly lowered his head to look at his chest. A black kunai blade pierced his heart. Below, Mitsui Takumi, who was lying on the ground with a listless look, burst of smoke gushed out of his body, and the whole person suddenly turned into a wooden stake. Substitute. Body technique. Wuxin slowly turned his head, glanced sideways, and looked at the murderer behind him. Mitsui Takumi's chin was mixed with blood, but his face was not listless. At this moment, there was shame, self-blame, reluctance, hesitation, and the pride of the conspiracy succeeding in his eyes. Takumi, 4. Why? Wuxin's eyes were blurred. After seeing that the person behind him was indeed his friend Takumi, his face was full of disbelief, and he stammered out the last question. Faced with Wuxin's question, Mitsui Takumi's eyes were filled with guilt, and he choked. I'm sorry. Wuxin, forgive me, I don't want to die. Mitsui Takumi's guilt lasted for less than 3 seconds, and his movements became more brutal. He twisted the handle of the kunai with force, and the sharp blade of the kunai stirred Wuxin's flesh and blood. The expression on Mitsui Takumi's face gradually twisted and became hideous. He shouted hysterically. Wuxin, only one person can survive this exam. Teacher Samihama Ryoma said that the only outcome for losers is death. Only death. Wuxin, even if we don't kill each other, we will be killed by the teacher in the end. I don't want to die, I really don't want to die. Wuxin, help me, let me live. I want to live. Mitsui Takumi's expression became more and more ferocious. The kunai that pierced Wuxin's heart twisted, and he thought Wuxin was not dying fast enough, so he pulled out the kunai and stabbed hard, shouting hysterically while stabbing. Die, die, die. Mitsui Takumi stabbed dozens of times in succession, and the movement slowly stopped. Ha. Ha. Hey. Mitsui Takumi sat on the ground, breathing heavily, looking at Wuxin, who was completely motionless. Sad tears fell from Mitsui Takumi's eyes, and at the same time, joy emerged. Wuxin, don't worry, I will inherit your name of genius and live for you. Ha 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 ha. Quote. Mitsui Takumi was a little crazy, excited and sad. No, Takumi, I will live well on my own. A faint voice came from behind Mitsui Takumi at an inopportune time, and at the same time, there was the sound of a sharp blade piercing his body. Puff. Mitsui Takumi's left chest was pierced by a kunai, just like Wuxin's heart was pierced before. Mitsui Takumi looked down at the kunai that pierced his heart in disbelief, and his eyes turned to the dead Wuxin below. Wuxin below was silent, and the scarlet blood that was originally gushing out strangely turned into clear water color. As the color changed, Wuxin's body also turned into a human-shaped water wave and turned into a pool of clear water. What ninjutsu is this? When did you perform it? Quote. Mitsui Takumi turned his head with difficulty, staring at Wuxin, who was crouching behind him and maintaining an assassination posture, and asked the last question of his life with difficulty. He was enrolled in the civilian department of the village, and he could not recognize the ninjutsu performed by Wuxin. At the same time, he was chilled by Wuxin's defense against him. Water clone technique. A durable water clone that condensed half of my chakra. I used it when you pretended to rub your chest with your hands, but actually secretly formed a seal. Takumi, you stabbed me so many times, I should return your sword, right? Quote. While answering Mitsui Takumi, Wuxin loosened his hand holding the kunai and slowly stood up. His last question was a little weak and his voice was weak. Standing, Wuxin looked down at Mitsui Takumi's unwilling and gradually dim eyes, until the light in his eyes completely dissipated, becoming dull and empty. After a long time, Wuxin raised his head and looked at the sky. His nose twitched and his expression was a little sad, a little confused, a little regretful, a little at a loss. Wuxin slowly raised his hands, looked at the blood sliding down between his fingers, and murmured. Blood. This is Takumi's blood. Tears fell from Wuxin's eyes, and he could not suppress his sadness. He lowered his head and looked at the body of Mitsui Takumi. Takumi, our classmate Momochi Zabuza will kill all the students in this class. We have a chance, and we can pass the exam without killing each other. But, Takumi, my ninja father warned me that living in this bloody mist country, I must be ruthless, unrighteous, and heartless. Especially for the enemies who hurt me, I must never have any mercy. Only in this way can I live for a long time in this bloody mist country. After Wuxin muttered to himself, a look of pain appeared on his face, and he covered his neck with both hands. Ah, Wuxin killed someone for the first time, and the one he killed was his childhood friend. His stomach was churning, and he lowered his head and vomited. Drink, 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 is this a ninja? Wuxin took a deep breath and had a deeper understanding of the profession of ninja. Wuxin couldn't help but recall the surprised and complicated expressions of his parents when he was 5 years old and practiced chakra concentration method and condensed chakra on the first day. He remembered the proud but worried eyes of his parents who were special jonins in the Hidden Mist village when he practiced ninjutsu at the age of 7 and succeeded in performing ninjutsu for the first time. Although his parents who were special jonins were not particularly famous and powerful Hidden Mist ninjas, they were also well known in the Hidden Mist village for their excellent tracking and auxiliary abilities. At this moment of the graduation exam, Wuxin understood his parents' worries. Their usual strictness, harshness, ruthlessness, and unsmillingness were for him to survive in the Hidden Mist village. Wuxin's thoughts were confused, and he didn't know how long it had been. The fog in the training ground gradually became thicker. The establishment of the Hidden Mist village originated from the fact that this area was filled with fog all year round, with abundant water vapor and humid air, which was very suitable for water escape and fog ninjutsu. The training ground was not very big, about 20 meters long and 10 meters wide. It was a regular training ground. The thick fog made Wuxin, who was in a trance, alert. After all, there was a lonely person among the students of this class, named Zabuza Momochi. The fog has become thicker. No, this is the mist hidden technique. The training ground was not very large. Wuxin, who had come back to his senses, could no longer see the boundary line of the A-17 training ground where he was. Wuxin instantly thought of Zabuza Momochi, a classmate of this class, and guessed something. Wuxin made a seal with his left hand in front of him, raised his right hand seal above his head, and shouted softly. Ninjutsu. Mist hidden technique. As Wuxin shouted softly, the fog in the training ground became thicker, and Wuxin's figure disappeared in the fog. The mist hidden technique, AD level ninjutsu, is the signature ninjutsu of the Hidden Mist Village. It is at the level of mastery and application of genin. It will be taught in the ninja school, and there will be an assessment of the degree of mastery. In addition to the primary method of using chakra to create thick fog, the use of the mist hidden technique also has the function of hiding oneself in the fog. It is a stealth technique that uses fog to hide the body, and it is also a pre-ninjutsu of the mist hidden assassination technique. Whoosh, swish, a sudden sonic boom sounded in the fog, and a short-haired boy held a kunai in both hands and pierced Wuxin's throat. Wuxin's eyes widened, and he grabbed the assassin's hands with both hands, his eyes full of disbelief. Wuxin, your mist hidden technique is too crude. The rhythm of your heartbeat is like a beacon. The short-haired boy assassin was the top student in the class, Zabuza Momochi. Momochi Zabuza was covered in blood. He succeeded in the assassination and taunted Wuxin's cheek mercilessly. Puff, oh, should I thank you for not piercing my heart? Zabuza-san. Behind Zabuza Momochi, another Wuxin suddenly appeared. This Wuxin had a cold expression, holding a kunai in his right hand, and pierced Zabuza Momochi's neck from behind without mercy as he spoke. The sharp blade of the kunai pierced through Zabuza's Adam's apple. The Wuxin whose throat was pierced by Zabuza Momochi, originally had a face twisted and painful on the verge of death, but the corners of his mouth suddenly raised high, revealing a hint of mockery, and then turned into a pool of clear water and scattered. The assassination techniques of the Hidden Mist Village mostly attack vital parts such as the throat, heart, and head, and will never miss the wrong place. There will not be a rookie among the ninjas selected under the Blood Mist policy. It seems that the so-called chief student is really not your limit, Wuxin-san. What? Wuxin heard the words behind him, and horror appeared on his indifferent face. The Momochi Zabuza, whose neck was pierced by Wuxin, turned into a pool of water just like Wuxin before. He was also a water clone. Puff. Wuxin had no time to change his moves, and Zabuza's hand holding a kunai, he thrust it out quickly, and the sharp blade of the kunai pierced through Wuxin's left chest. Zabuza Momochi succeeded in the assassination, but his brows were deeply knitted, and his eyes revealed doubts. Wuxin, who was assassinated, turned into a blue-green body again, and turned into a pool of water, scattered on the ground, and it turned out to be a water clone. Zabuza Momochi turned around suddenly, threw the kunai in his hand behind him, and at the same time, his hands quickly reached the ninja tool bag behind his waist, took out the kunai and threw it continuously. Ding, ding. About 10 meters behind Zabuza, a blurry figure twisted his waist and easily dodged the first kunai, and then the kunai in his right hand hit the two kunai behind it, knocking the kunai away easily, with smooth and easy movements. Your assassination skills are good, Zabuza. I don't bother to deal with you on weekdays, but now I'm in a bad mood. If this is all you have, then be prepared to die. Wuxin looked at the blurry figure about 10 meters ahead, his tone was calm and his eyes were fierce. HMPH, do you think you are really the first just because you are a so-called chief student? Zabuza didn't care, his tone was disdainful, his left hand was erected in front of his chest, his right hand was raised above his head, and he shouted. Ninjutsu. Mist hidden technique. With Zabuza's shout, the original visual range of about 10 meters seemed to be more blurred, and Zabuza's blurry figure completely disappeared in the mist. Zabuza, there is no point in competing in the mist hidden technique. Your ranking in these ninjutsu is not as good as mine. Are you assassinating me to get rid of your eternal second place? Wuxin, who is usually gentle and warm, is strangely a bit venomous and nervous today. His hands move in the same way as Zabuza and he shouts. Ninjutsu. Mist hidden technique. As Wuxin shouted, his figure disappeared into the mist and became hidden. The training ground fell into a strange silence, and time passed slowly. Wuxin, your heartbeat is just like a bell. Throat, cervical spine, lungs, liver, carotid artery, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. 8 vital points, guess which part 1 will attack. The thick fog at the A-17 training ground and even nearby places caused extremely low visibility, and the low voice of Momochi Zabuza was heard from all directions. It gave people a strong sense of psychological oppression, which showed that Zabuza was not affected by Wuxen's previous ridicule. However, no one in the field responded to his voice. Wuxen, hidden in the mist, ignored Zabuza's words that exerted psychological pressure. He, do you think I'm scaring you? Zabuza's low voice gave people great psychological pressure, and as Zabuza finished speaking, it actually rang in Wuxen's ears. Wuxen turned his face slowly to the right in disbelief, and what came into view was the profile of Momochi Zabuza, with the kunai in Momochi Zabuza's left hand placed in front of Wuxen's throat. It's over. Puff. Ha, really? Before Zabuza Momochi could slash the throat of the hostage Wuxen, a kunai pierced his abdomen from behind. At the same time, Wuxen's teasing question rang out from behind. Zabuza looked dazed, and water gushed out of the wound. His whole body turned blue-green and became a pool of clear water, which scattered on the ground. The two Wuxians were expressionless, and their figures gradually disappeared in the thick fog. Whoosh, whoosh, go to hell. With a sonic boom, the two Wuxians dodged the attack on their throats in an emergency, causing the skin on their cheeks to be slashed by the kunai. Puff, puff. As the price of being injured, the two Wuxians also injured the assassin. In the field, 3 figures turned into water and dissipated, and another one shed scarlet blood beads. I didn't expect Zabuza to have mastered the instant body technique. No wonder you came to me so quickly. Wuxen stroked the scratched cheek with his left hand, feeling the hot blood. His expression was a little solemn. I didn't just come here quickly. Wuxen, I want to congratulate you, you are already the last survivor of this year. You should thank me, because I specially saved the best food for the last. Now, as long as I kill you, I will be the only student who passed the exam this year, In the thick fog, Zabuza's voice and his ugly laughter like a night owl came from all directions. Wuxen frowned slightly when he heard Zabuza's words, and he didn't believe that he didn't seem to have been here for a long time. Wuxen forgot that after killing Mitsui Takumi, he was immersed in grief and recalled his parents and past events, and didn't notice the passage of time. Wuxen's expression was stern, and he twisted his body to the right, while his right kunai suddenly slashed to the right and back. There was only the strong wind caused by Wuxen's action in the field, and there was no sound of weapons cutting through human bodies. Wuxen's face was pale, knowing how dangerous it was just now, and his face was no longer calm as before, and he shouted in fear. No, this is not an ordinary instant body technique. Mist, could it be that you have mastered the mist instant body? After Wuxen finished speaking, his expression regained some calmness, and a thoughtful light flashed in his eyes, and he shouted loudly. Yes, you knew that the mist hiding technique didn't work, but you still consumed chakra to perform the mist hiding technique. It was actually to perform the mist instant body. Instant body technique. Conventional physical technique instant body is AD level ninjutsu, which can be mastered and used by genin level. Although the difficulty of learning and mastering instant body technique is not high, the application of instant body technique is very different. Ordinary ninja instant body technique is basically to move quickly, so that people can't keep up with the speed of the caster. To put instant body technique into practice and generate combat effectiveness, it is definitely not something that a genin can do, or even an ordinary ninja can do. The mist instant body is a ninjutsu that uses fog to move at high speed. Compared with ordinary instant body techniques, it is a ninjutsu that even a jonin may not be able to master. There are tens of thousands of ninjas in the hidden mist village, and there are only more than 100 jonin. Among these more than 100 people, only a small number of people can master the mist instant body technique, which shows how difficult the mist instant body technique is. Corresponding to the difficulty of mastering it, the combat effectiveness of the mist instant body technique is also. Speed, to some extent, can determine victory or defeat. While Wuxen was afraid of Zabuza's mist instant body technique, Zabuza also frowned tightly. After Zabuza finished his exam, he used the flickering technique and the mist flickering technique to kill all the students in this class, leaving only Wuxen in front of him. And Wuxen was the first person to dodge his mist flickering technique. This is definitely not something that students of the ninja school can do. To some extent, even the teachers of the ninja school would find it difficult to survive his assassination. You have a good eye. You actually recognized me. However, I'm curious, how did you predict my movements? Zabuza couldn't help it after all, and asked the question. Wuxin took a deep breath, made a seal with his left hand and stood upright in front of his chest, and raised his right hand high. Knowing that Zabuza was proficient in the mist flickering technique, Wuxin still increased the mist. Zabuza, no matter how fast you are, it's useless in front of me. Wuxin was tense and alert, but his tone was calm and gentle, without the previous panic, as if he was not the one who lost his composure before. The fog was surging in the field. HMPH. The highly alert Wuxin snorted coldly, turned to the left, twisted his waist and swung his arms, and shot the kunai backwards. At the same time, he took out the kunai from the ninja bag with both hands and threw two in succession. After throwing the kunai, Wuxin stretched his hands forward and held a kunai tightly, rushing forward quickly. Wuxin didn't run a few steps before he stepped on something, staggered, and almost fell, revealing a huge flaw. It was just Wuxin's attack just now that drove Zabuza away, and Zabuza didn't catch this opportunity. Wuxin looked down at his feet, and saw a corpse with brown hair and a pale face. It was Mitsui Takumi who was killed by him. At this moment, Mitsui Takumi's lifeless eyes seemed to be staring at Wuxin. Don't look at me, don't look at me. When Wuxin saw his friend who was killed by him, fear suddenly appeared in his eyes, and he shouted a little neurotically. In the mist, about 7 or 8 meters in front of Wuxin, Zabuza's blurry figure slowly emerged. Zabuza, covered in blood, looked at Wuxin with complicated eyes and said, I thought you had no psychological burden in killing your friends, but I didn't expect that you would be so unbearable. Wuxin regained his sanity instantly after hearing Zabuza's words. He held his right hand upside down and shouted, What do you mean by unbearable? We are human beings, not beasts. Takumi, what did Takumi do wrong? He has to die meaninglessly like this. And, he was killed by his best friend himself. I killed my friend. Really, it seems that you also think that such an exam subject is problematic. Perhaps, we are the same kind of people. Momochi Zabuza's voice was low and desolate, without the previous violent and distorted feeling. After a slight pause, Zabuza continued. Such an exam is wrong, there is no point in killing each other among classmates. Wuxin, I have killed all the classmates of this class, 116 people, only you and I are left. If I am the only graduate of this class, do you think that the adults in the village will reflect on the meaning of this kind of exam? Quote. Reflect, reflect, then what? Will those adults change? Zabuza fell into silence after hearing Wuxin's question. After a while, Zabuza sneered. You are right. I don't know whether those adults will change, and I can't influence their decision. But as you said, people are not animals, who can be heartless. My deskmate, Huizi. What did Huizi do wrong? To die so meaninglessly. Killed by the deskmate who I took care of and loved so much, myself. Zabuza said at the end. Mist appeared in his eyes, and a few drops of water fell from the corners of his eyes. I cut her throat with my own hands, and her blood splashed on my face, woo. Zabuza's nose twitched, and he actually cried. At the same time, Zabuza's eyes became increasingly violent, and he roared. I want to let the adults in the village understand that killing each other will leave only one of more than 100 candidates alive. Whether they change or not, the hundreds of ninja students trained by the ninja school will only have one left in an hour. If this happens a few more times, the Hidden Mist village will have no future. The future and change must be chosen. The reason is that only one survived this exam. The young Zabuza turned into a roar at the end. His face gradually became ferocious, violent, and hysterical. At the same time, Zabuza waved his hands, and several shurikens and kunai shot towards Wuxin. Ding, ding, ding. Wuxin had a blank expression on his face, holding a kunai, swinging his arms, and blocking all the kunai thrown by Zabuza. Kill. Accompanied by Zabuza's violent shout, the strong wind surged, and Wuxin jumped to the right. Zabuza's mist instant assassination failed again, and the whole person disappeared in the mist. A sonic boom sounded. Wuxin twisted his waist and abdomen to the left, holding the kunai and slashing horizontally to the left and back, but the horizontal slash mist, and the surging mist seemed to silently tell the fierceness of the fight just now. Why can you predict my movements? With such a speed, even our teacher may not be able to dodge. How did you do it? In the thick fog, Zabuza's voice came from all directions. Hey, no comment. Wuxin sneered, reached into the ninja tool bag behind his waist with his left hand, took out a kunai, held the kunai upside down with both hands, and took a defensive posture. The scene suddenly came to a standstill. After a while, a voice came out of the thick fog. I understand, fog is fog. The fog hiding technique has no effect on us. I use the fog hiding technique to perform fog instant body. So, why do you use the fog hiding technique? Zabuza has a very high combat talent and noticed something wrong. The fog hiding technique has little effect on both sides. He uses the fog as a medium to move at high speed. Then why does Wuxin use the fog hiding technique? The answer is obvious. Wuxin can repeatedly predict his actions, which must be related to fog. For invisibility, Zabuza, your fog hiding assassination technique is too superficial. Wuxin maintained a defensive posture and put pressure on Zabuza with his words. Hey, don't mislead me, Wuxin, you sensed me through the fog, right? In the training ground, the thick fog gradually thinned, and Zabuza's figure appeared about 10 meters in front of Wuxin. Wuxin looked at Zabuza who appeared in front of him and thought. Zabuza's fighting talent is indeed not to be underestimated. He actually sensed my fog perception technique. The fog perception technique was created by Wuxin's father. Wuxin's father was a well-known tracking and detection auxiliary special ninja in the Hidden Mist village. The fog perception technique was his own unique secret technique. The difficulty of fog perception training is relatively high. Even with Wuxin's superb learning talent, it took him a month to learn this ninjutsu. Other ninjutsu such as water clones were learned by Wuxin in one go, which shows how difficult it is. If it weren't for the fog perception technique, Wuxin could sense Zabuza, and he would have been killed by Zabuza's fog instant body long ago. The danger of the fog instant body technique is so great that even the ninjas of the Hidden Mist village will be cautious and will never dare to be careless. As the fog gradually thinned, Wuxin and Zabuza both revealed their figures and could be seen with the eyes. The two men were about 10 meters apart, staring at each other. Zabuza dispersed the mist he created, but Wuxin still maintained the mist perception technique. The chakra consumption was proportional to the range of coverage and perception. The thin mist created by Wuxin only covered this training ground, so the consumption was not high. In the mist, the enemy had no vision, but Wuxin could observe the opponent's every move, which was equivalent to opening the entire map. If Zabuza was not a master of assassination and could hear the enemy's heartbeat, it would be a dark spot. Zabuza stared at Wuxin, swung his hands and began to form seals, so fast that his arms and fingers turned into afterimages. Wuxin saw this, and his chakra moved to the soles of his feet, and his figure disappeared on the spot. HMPH. Zabuza snorted coldly, and a stream of water emerged from his body, wrapping his whole body up, and the water flow rotated, becoming larger and higher. Wuxin's instant stabbing, the kunai stabbed in the rotating water flow, was bounced off by the water flow. Wuxin missed the attack, and jumped back, pulling away. Zabuza, whose body was wrapped in the water flow, also made a sound at this moment, and shouted softly. Water escape. Snake's mouth. The water flow rotating around Zabuza turned higher and higher, and after reaching a height of 7 or 8 meters, the top turned into a big mouth, and the water flow bent down to bite Wuxin not far away. Wuxin looked solemn, condensed chakra under his feet, and jumped about 5 meters to the left, dodging the bite of the big mouth of the water flow. The big mouth of the water flow, including its body, was more than 10 meters long and about 2 meters thick. After missing the attack, it turned around and rushed towards Wuxin's position again, at an extremely fast speed, like a real python. Wuxin saw this and did not have time to breathe. He quickly formed seals with his hands. The water flowed like a snake's mouth, biting most of Wuxin's body, and swallowed Wuxin into the center of the water flow with the impact. Zabuza maintained the seal of Mao with both hands, controlling the ninjutsu. Seeing that his ninjutsu swallowed Wuxin, his expression was solemn, and there was no joy on his face. As Zabuza expected, about 5 or 6 meters in front of the mouth of the ninjutsu snake, a sudden surge of smoke appeared, and Wuxin's figure appeared in it. As for Wuxin, who was swallowed by the ninjutsu, he had already turned into a wooden stake. Zabuza was extremely fast, and he controlled the ninjutsu python to pounce on Wuxin again. Wuxin took out a kunai with a yellow talisman paper from his ninja tool bag with some heartache. Although his face was distressed, his movements were not slow. He threw the kunai under his feet, then jumped back to dodge, made a seal with his hands, and shouted. Explode! Boom! A violent explosion sounded, raising a strong wind and smoke. The head of the water snake that was chasing relentlessly was blown into rain by the detonating talisman, breaking through the smoke and scattering everywhere, and the water flow without the snake head was like losing its life, scattered on the ground, and turned into water marks. Swish! Swish! The smoke and dust just rose up, washed by the water and rain, and disappeared quickly. Before Wuxin could relax, his lower abdomen was pierced by the kunai held by Zabuza, accompanied by a strong wind, and clear water fell from the wound. Tick, tick, water clone. Impossible. You don't have time to perform ninjutsu. Zabuza's eyes were wide open, and the water drops dripping on his hands clearly told him that the person in front of him was a water clone. The wind was surging, and Zabuza had no time to think about when Wuxin used the water clone. He changed his gestures very quickly, pulled out the kunai that pierced Wuxin's water clone with his left hand, and stabbed it to the left with his left hand. Puff! Tick! Tick! Zabuza hit with one blow, and the coolness dripping on his hand made Zabuza realize that the one behind him was still a water clone. The two pierced water clones opened their hands before dissipating, hugged Zabuza, and turned into water marks scattered on him. A figure quickly appeared behind Zabuza, holding the seal of the rabbit with both hands. Zabuza reacted very quickly, clenched his right fist, and swung it hard. The physical punch that should have been fast and powerful seemed to be in the water, and the movement was slow. Ninjutsu. Water prison technique. Wuxin behind Zabuza shouted softly, and the water scattered on Zabuza and the underground water flowed rapidly, expanding to form a water ball with a diameter of about 2 meters, wrapping Zabuza. Wuxin's original mouse seals on both hands changed, his left hand maintained the way seal, and his right hand reached into the water prison to control it. At this moment, Zabuza didn't understand that he had been tricked. He thought Wuxin's water escape ninjutsu to deal with him revealed a flaw, but it turned out to be a trap to lure him. The water in the water prison technique is extremely heavy. People who are bound by the water prison basically lose their ability to move, becoming lambs to be slaughtered, and can only drown in the water prison. Zabuza turned his head with difficulty, staring at Wuxin behind him with anger and unwillingness in his eyes. Don't be angry, Zabuza, this ninjutsu is my last chakra. You are the second in the class for a long time, but you can please me to this extent and win my recognition. If I remember correctly, your diving breath holding score is 9 minutes and 17 seconds, right? Don't worry, with my current chakra, the water prison can only last for 10 minutes. As long as you can break through, you can survive. Come on, classmate Zabuza, he. Wuxin, who controls the water prison technique, speaks softly, but his lips are raised in a strange arc, and his eyes are a little sick and crazy. The reason why Wuxin is so considerate to cheer Zabuza up is because Wuxin knows that Zabuza can read his lip language. Zabuza glared at Wuxin. He couldn't hear Wuxin's voice in the water, but he could read Wuxin's lip language when he spoke. Looking at Wuxin's crazy grin and the final taunt, Zabuza's eyes were even more angry. On the training ground, the serious-looking teacher Samihama Ryoma held a pocket watch in his hand, a look of doubt flashed in his eyes, and he murmured. It's been 57 minutes, and no student has come to report. This situation is something Samihama Ryoma has never encountered in his many years of teaching, and he felt a little uneasy. There are 4 areas, A, B, C, D. Each of you will check one area to check the student's exam results. Yes, X4, swish, swish. The 4 Chunin teachers besides Samihama Ryoma heard the words, responded, and disappeared on the spot. Mushin at the A17 training ground, Zabuza at the B6 training ground. With their strength, it shouldn't take so long to deal with the opponent. Samihama Ryoma felt even more uneasy, and he made a seal with his hands, and disappeared on the spot, leaving only the breeze blowing the leaves. A17 training ground. Wuxin's left hand maintained the seal of the unknown standing upright on his chest, and his right hand went deep into the water prison technique, continuously transporting chakra to maintain a round water ball with a diameter of about 2 meters. Wuxin, who had performed multiple ninjutsu, had beads of sweat on his forehead, and his usually calm and indifferent face also had a grin, which showed that his physical strength and chakra had reached the limit. 9 minutes and 30 seconds, Zabuza-san, congratulations, you have broken through the limit. He, come on Zabuza, hold on for another 30 seconds and you will survive. Wuxin's forehead was dripping with sweat, but he still had the leisure to praise Zabuza Momochi, but his laughter was gloomy and hoarse, and he looked neurotic. In the water prison, Zabuza Momochi, who was only 9 years old, had a flushed face, rolled his eyes, covered his throat with both hands, and spit bubbles in the water ball. Especially his legs, after a while of kicking, he seemed to have no strength and was as tight as a wooden stake. Zabuza Momochi's consciousness was already blurred. He could not hear Wuxin's voice in the water ball, nor could he see Wuxin's lip movements, and he did not receive Wuxin's encouragement. Whoosh! Ha! The sound of the kunai. Wuxin heard the sound and judged that the kunai was not shot at him. The kunai was stuck next to the water ball, and a yellow talisman paper was tied to it. Detonating talisman. Wuxin recognized what the talisman paper was, and turned his cheek to look in the direction where the kunai was shot. Stop it, Wuxin. In the mist, Samihama Ryoma's tall figure emerged, and as the centipede-shaped scar on Samihima's face jumped, his cold words came. Wuxin carefully looked at Samihama Ryoma, and then glanced at the kunai with the detonating talisman next to the water ball. Ha! In view of Samihama Ryoma's reluctance, Wuxin did not resist, sneered, and pulled his right hand out of the water ball. With Wuxin's action, the shape of the water prison technique instantly disintegrated, and the water ball turned into clear water and fell to the ground. Zabuza fell to the ground with the water flow, motionless. Whoosh! Samihama Ryoma instantly stepped forward, squatted in front of Zabuza, stretched out his hand to feel Zabuza's breath, his face instantly became serious, and put his hands on Zabuza Momochi's chest and began emergency rescue. Samihama Ryoma did not ask Wuxin why Zabuza appeared here, nor did he ask why the two of them fought. His first reaction was to save the student Momochi Zabuza. Wuxin watched Samihama Ryoma perform CPR and artificial respiration on Zabuza, feeling a little hot, and turned his cheek to look elsewhere. Cough, cough, puff. After about 2 minutes, Momochi Zabuza coughed and spit out water. Wuxin heard the noise and turned around to see Zabuza resurrected and survived. He couldn't help but sneer. He's not dead yet, he's really lucky, huh? Swish. A sound of breaking through the air sounded, and a teacher appeared out of thin air. The instructor looked around and saw Samihama Ryoma here, and said in a trembling voice. Ryoma, the students, all the students, are dead. When the instructor approached, he saw Wuxin and the depressed Momochi Zabuza on the side, and read out their names. Wuxin, Zabuza. Samihama Ryoma did not answer the teacher's words. He turned his head with a serious expression and looked at Wuxin, then looked at Momochi Zabuza lying on the ground, and said indifferently. Wuxin, Zabuza, what's going on? Wuxin raised his shoulder. Teacher Ryoma, you should ask Momochi Zabuza. Why he is here is the key point, isn't it? Swish, swish. While the few people were talking, the other 3 teachers also found this place. The first sentence they said was exactly the same as the previous teacher, that the students were all dead. Samihama Ryoma came directly to the A-17 training ground and did not pay much attention to the students in other training grounds. At this moment, Samihama Ryoma understood the big picture of the matter and guessed something. He looked down at Momochi Zabuza and asked seriously, Zabuza, what's going on? Zabuza, who was lying on the ground, sat up slowly, took a long breath, and then twisted his neck. Nothing, I just killed them all. Zabuza said in a nonchalant tone. What? X4. The 4 instructors were shocked when they heard Zabuza's words. One of the instructors had a shocked expression mixed with suspicion and disbelief on his face, and shouted. Zabuza, are you saying that you killed all the students in this class? Are you sure it was you? Killed them all. No, there is one left. Zabuza raised his chin towards Wuxin, looking nonchalant. Samihama Ryoma's face was so gloomy that it seemed like water was about to drip out. He said in a deep voice. Zabuza, how did you do it? In 1 hour, how did you manage to kill more than 100 people? Samihama Ryoma's question was also what the other 4 teachers wanted to know. To be fair, even if they did it themselves, they might not be able to kill more than 100 ninja students in 1 hour. And Zabuza, no matter how good he was, could not go beyond common sense. How did you do it? Of course I used a kunai. I cut their throats one by one. Just like cutting Kiko's throat, he. Keiko, Yamashita Keiko, Zabuza Momochi's deskmate. Zabuza was a bit withdrawn, and usually only interacted with Yamashita Keiko. But although Zabuza was talented, he could be said to be no less than their teachers in the 3-body technique, the mist hiding technique, and the kunai throwing technique. But even so, this kind of thing is too unbelievable. It's the instant body technique. Zabuza's instant body technique is very proficient. If I'm not mistaken, Zabuza used the instant body technique with the help of fog, moving at high speed and killing at high speed. If it's the fog instant body technique, then it's possible. Washin, who was standing aside, explained the reason why Zabuza could accomplish such a feat. What? Fog instant body technique? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. It's rare for a genin to master the instant body technique. How could he master the fog instant body technique? The 4 Chunin teachers couldn't believe what Wuxin said. Samihama Ryoma looked at Momochi Zabuza with a blank expression on his face. The centipede scar on his face was throbbing, as if he was going to attack in the next moment. Is that so? Zabuza, yes, I used a kunai to slash their necks one by one, that's all. He. As for how I approached them, didn't Wuxin tell me? Zabuza still looked indifferent, and was completely fearless of the serious crime he committed. Hearing Zabuza's admission, Samihama Ryoma and the 4 Chunin teachers were shocked. Momochi Zabuza, at the age of 9, was already so cruel and unruly. What matched his cruelty and unruliness was his amazing ninja talent. Samihama Ryoma and the 4 Chunin teachers turned their heads to look at Wuxin, then at Zabuza, looking left and right between the two. If Momochi Zabuza mastered the mist instant body, plus his previous excellent assassination skills, if Zabuza wanted to commit a crime, then the more than 100 students of this class would indeed be difficult to survive. Then, how did Wuxin survive? Unlike the 4 Chunin examinees who frowned and thought, Samihama Ryoma looked at Wuxin with a strong desire for exploration and a subtle fear. If he hadn't rescued him in time, Zabuza would have died. The atmosphere in the field was weird. After a long silence, Samihama Ryoma said, "This is a serious matter and needs the decision of the Mizukage. Koga, Jiro, you 2 take Zabuza to the hospital for examination and treatment. After the treatment, take Zabuza to the Mizukage building." Yes, X2. The 2 Chunin teachers stepped forward after agreeing. One of them lifted Zabuza and carried him on his back. With the sound of sonic boom, the 2 walked away. You 2, order someone to clean the examination room and do the aftermath. Samihama Ryoma turned his head to look at the other 2 Chunin teachers and whispered in an orderly manner. Yes, X2. The 2 Chunin teachers received the order and left. After arranging these, Samihama Ryoma turned to look at Wuxin, with approval in his eyes. Wuxin, you are worthy of being the top student of this year. Congratulations, you have graduated, follow me to the Mizukage building. After Wuxin's chakra was exhausted and Zabuza was taken away, Wuxin's face showed a depressed look. In addition, he killed his friend and was in a bad mood. At this moment, Wuxin wanted to go home and rest, to be alone, but Wuxin did not dare to disobey the words of the head teacher and to meet the Mizukage. After a long silence, he nodded. Yes, Mizukage building. In the Mizukage office, Wuxin stood quietly beside the teacher Samihama Ryoma. The 3rd Mizukage had long black hair down to his waist and a heroic and resolute face. After listening to Samihama Ryoma's report, the 3rd Mizukage was briefly shocked and fell into silence. After a while, he spoke. I didn't expect such a thing to happen. It's simply horrifying. The 3rd Mizukage had a thoughtful look in his eyes, and glanced at Wuxin, looking him up and down. Knowing how Wuxin defeated Zabuza, his eyes were full of appreciation and approval. In other words, you relied on perception to survive Zabuza's assassination and eventually defeated Zabuza, right? The 3rd Mizukage sighed and skipped Zabuza's story, and focused his interest on Wuxin. It should be killed. Wuxin corrected the 3rd Mizukage's words. Without Samihama Ryoma's obstruction and subsequent rescue, Zabuza would have died. Wuxin, don't be rude, just answer whatever the Mizukage asks. The class teacher, Samihama Ryoma, was very respectful to the Mizukage and warned Wuxin with a serious face. The third Mizukage heard Wuxin's words, and his eyes were full of admiration. He waved his hand. Don't be so restrained, Ryoma. The third Mizukage paused slightly, his expression became a little more serious, and then continued softly. You can leave first. Yes. After Samihama Ryoma responded respectfully, he bowed slightly, then turned and left. The third Mizukage looked at Wuxin, and after a short silence, he said softly. Wuxin, the top student of this class, Momochi Zabuza killed the only survivor among more than 100 classmates of this class. Congratulations, you will be the ninja of the Hidden Mist Village in the future. Yes. The third Mizukage spoke a long paragraph, and the tired Wuxin just responded softly. The third Mizukage didn't care about it, but smiled warmly. Why, are you still immersed in the hesitation of killing your friend? Wuxin looked at the third Mizukage's warm attitude quietly, a little surprised, but didn't answer. The third Mizukage didn't care about Wuxin's silence, got up from his seat, turned around and walked to the large French window behind his seat, turned around, waved at Wuxin, and motioned Wuxin to come closer. Wuxin didn't know what the Mizukage wanted to do, so he walked forward woodenly and stood beside the Mizukage. Wuxin, look, the continuous houses and tall green trees. Looking further away, it's the fog that shrouds the village, protects the village and isolates it from the outside world. It makes the village safe, beautiful, natural and quiet. When I was a child, I heard from the first generation Mizukage that there would be clouds and mist where the gods live in the sky. Wuxin, do the clouds and mist in our village look like the legendary place where the gods live? Quote. The third Mizukage's voice was soft, as if he was lost in memories. Wuxin heard the third Mizukage's words and nodded gently. From this perspective, the Hidden Mist Village, with its houses surrounded by clouds and lush vegetation, was indeed a beautiful sight. It was just that Wuxin did not comment on the third Mizukage's words about the so-called immortals living there. How could immortals kill each other in a place where they lived? In response to Wuxin's silence, the third Mizukage turned around and looked at Wuxin. His warm expression was put away, and he became a little serious, exuding the power of the shadow of a village. Wuxin, do you know why the graduation exam subject of the ninja school is to sever the ties? Sever the ties. Wuxin looked at the third Mizukage, with some surprise in his eyes. He was surprised that the third Mizukage described the fratricide among his companions as severing the ties. Yes, sever the ties. Ninjas don't need these useless emotions. The so-called friendship between friends will only affect the speed of performing ninjutsu and the success rate of the mission. Quote. The third Mizukage spoke in a deep voice, and Wuxin remained silent. Wuxin, I understand your pain and sadness, but only ninjas without emotions are truly powerful ninjas. The village has always been in danger and needs powerful ninjas to protect it. The village has been established for 45 years. When the village was first established, it was formed by the powerful ninja clans of the water country. Clans such as Hozumi, Terumi, Yuki, Kagaya, and Kuju hold everything in the water country. These superior ninja clans wantonly murdered the people of the water country and had the power of life and death. The people live in fear every day. The third Mizukage looked compassionate and patted Wuxin's young shoulders. The village can only compete with these ninja clans if it trains powerful ninjas. It is precisely because of the efforts of countless civilian ninjas that clans such as Terumi, Kuju, and Hazuka have joined. Today, there are still clans such as Shui and Kagaya entrenched in the water country. They belong to the village in name, but in fact they are independent and compete with the village. The ninja clan has a long history, and some have even lasted for thousands of years. To fight against these powerful ninja clans, the village must cultivate more powerful ninjas. In this way, we can protect the village and the people. Quote. The voice of the third generation of Mizukage gradually increased, and after a slight pause, his face became more serious. Wuxin, your friend Takumi, including those who entered the ninja school, their sacrifice is not meaningless. Their blood makes the village's clouds thicker. Their lives have cultivated excellent ninjas like you for the village. The village relies on these excellent ninjas to protect the village, deter the ninjas with evil intentions, and make the water country peaceful and tranquil. Quote. The third Mizukage had always paid more attention to Wuxin, who had been known as a child prodigy since childhood. In addition, the accident of Zabuza Momochi happened in Wuxin's generation, which made the third Mizukage understand the preciousness of the talents of Wuxin and Zabuza Momochi. The third Mizukage, who knew the resumes of both of them very well, condescended to comfort and teach them personally. At this moment, Wuxin was very tired, and his eyes were red and swollen. After 9 years of rebirth, today can be said to be the most muddled day. Wuxin felt that the third Mizukage was talking nonsense, but he also felt that what the Mizukage said made sense, and his mind was in a mess. Yes, the tired Wuxin was pale and his eyes were bloodshot. Encouraged and taught by the third Mizukage, Wuxin bowed and agreed loudly without thinking too much, considering the atmosphere. Early morning. The sunlight, combined with the mist in the hidden mist village, illuminates the village like a fairyland, magnificent and magnificent. In Wuxin's yard, Wuxin closed his eyes tightly, holding 3 hidden weapons in his right hand, and put them on his face, as if brewing something. Wuxin suddenly opened his eyes, swung his arms, and threw the 1,000 weapons out. Clumsy, clumsy. The 1,000 weapons accurately hit the throat and heart of the target with people on the edge. Woof, woof. A tall and thin yellow dog with tendons in the yard roared twice very appropriately, as if praising Wuxin's throwing skills. Wonkai, go play. Wuxin, who had finished his morning training, had no intention of playing with the dog. The day after graduation, he had to report to the ninja school and meet the new teacher, a ninja who was both a superior and a teacher. Woo! The yellow dog named Wonkai didn't run away, but wagged its tail, came close, lay on Wuxin's feet, and turned its belly to Wuxin, making a coquettish sound. Wuxin squatted down and rubbed the dog's belly helplessly. Wonkai was born the year Wuxin entered the ninja school. He was a gift from Wuxin's father to Wuxin. He was raised since childhood and had a very good relationship with him. He was used as a companion pet and a summoned beast to assist in combat. There were originally 5 hounds in the yard, and the other 4 were his father's summoned beast pets. Before, Wuxin and Momochi Zabuza fought in the fog. Even if Wuxin did not rely on perception ninjutsu, if he used summoning ninjutsu, he could still find the enemy hidden in the fog by summoning ninjutsu. It's been half a month, and my parents haven't come back yet. The ninja dogs have been summoned away by the spirit for 7 days, right? What kind of mission is it that requires the assistance of 4 ninja dogs? Wu Xin, who was stroking Wonkai, always felt a vague sense of uneasiness about his parents' outing this time. Although his parents often went out to perform missions, it has been a long time since they had a mission that would take more than half a month. Not to mention that they summoned the 4 ninja dogs raised in the yard to help them. The most important thing is that the spirit ninja dogs have a time limit, and it is a bit unreasonable for the ninja dogs not to come back in a week. Woof. Wonkai seemed to have noticed Wu Xin's mentality, and there was some humanistic worry in his crisp shout. It's just tracking and exploring the enemy. Generally speaking, the degree of danger is limited. Wonkai, we should not worry too much. Wu Xin patted Wonkai's forehead, put his mind back, got up and walked into the house. The house of the special ninja in the Hidden Mist village has 2 floors, a front yard and a backyard. There are ninja dogs in the yard, and targets for throwing training. Wuxin returned to the house, wiped his face with a towel, wiped off the sweat from the morning training, and then put on the ninja forehead protector he got yesterday. After putting on the forehead protector, Wuxin looked in the mirror. There was a forehead protector tied on his forehead. The mark of the Hidden Mist forehead protector was a water drop, 2 rows above and below, 2 in each row. The forehead protector also served as a headscarf, gathering Wuxin's soft black waist-length hair behind his head. Wuxin was wearing traditional coarse linen clothes, which were simple overall. Although he was young, he had a handsome and fair face, and a strange calm temperament, like a little adult. It's almost time, the last day of school. Wuxin, who had almost packed up, did not forget the business of reporting to the ninja school, and turned to leave. Ninja school. Wuxin strode into this familiar yet strange place and went straight to the 3rd floor of the school. The teaching building of the Hidden Mist Village Ninja School has 4 floors. The first, second and third floors are for students of 3 grades, and the fourth floor is for the school's senior management and leaders. Wuxin quickly walked to the third floor of the ninja school. The third floor, which used to be noisy, was now exceptionally quiet. Each grade has 3 classes, each with about 40 students. Classes often compete with each other to stimulate competition and unity among students. However, after the incident with Zabuza, perhaps in future graduation exams, each class will be separated and looked after to avoid the situation where only a few people are left in a grade. Wuxin walked into the first class of the 3rd grade, sat in his seat, looked around, and found that he was the only one in the whole class. What happened to Zabuza Momochi? Touched by the scene, Wuxin couldn't help but think of Zabuza Momochi, although according to his memory, Wuxin knew that Zabuza Momochi would survive. Not only would he survive, but he would also live well. He could even become a big shot like the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Bang! The classroom door opened, and the homeroom teacher Samihama Ryoma and a man of medium build, about 1.7 meters tall, wearing a forehead protector and a gray-brown vest, appeared. They walked into the classroom one after another. Samihama Ryoma glanced at Wuxin, turned his head to look at the man beside him, and said softly, "Yasudo, this is Wuxin, the graduate of this year, a very outstanding boy, who has always been known as the top student." Top student, haha. The ninja called Yudo showed a meaningful smile on his face, raised his right hand and pointed at Wuxin. Wuxin, right, follow me. After that, the ninja named Yudo turned and left. Wuxin looked at Samihama Ryoma, with a questioning look in his eyes. "Murayama Yudo is a very reliable jonin in our village. He will be your captain in the future. Go." Samihama Ryoma was very dedicated. He did not feel unhappy about Murayama Yudo's departure without saying goodbye, and explained to Wuxin softly. Yes, Wuxin got the affirmation, got up and chased Murayama Yudo. However, when Wuxin walked out of the classroom, he could not see Murayama Yudo. Wuxin looked around to make sure that the man had left. A show of strength, or a test. Wuxin closed his eyes, formed a seal with his hands, and his chakra surged, performing the perception technique. We're already at the school gate. This guy, I'm afraid he didn't even wait for me. Wuxin found out where Yudo Murayama was, condensed his chakra with his feet, jumped down from the 3rd floor, crossed the playground, and ran towards the school gate. The school gate and the teaching building are about 100 meters apart, and there is a playground in the middle. This perception range is probably the limit of Wuxin's current perception technique. Wuxin condensed his chakra on his feet, and his body rushed very fast. He arrived at the gate of Shinobi School in about 3 seconds. Yudo Murayama crossed his arms around his chest, noticed the movement behind him, and turned his head to look behind him. Wuxin, chief student, you are really good. Meet me at the entrance of Higashino Hot Spring in the east of the village within 10 minutes. Murayama Yudo spoke coldly, and after he finished speaking, he turned into smoke and disappeared. 10 minutes, Higashino Hot Spring in the east. Wuxin repeated Murayama Yudo's words, condensed his chakra on his feet, and ran eastward. Higashino Hot Spring, one of the famous hot springs in Kurigakure, is located at the easternmost part of the village. The ninja school is near the center of the village, and the 2 locations are more than 10 kilometers apart. In other words, you have to run more than 1 kilometer in 1 minute, and it is not a problem to run 3 kilometers at high speed in 3 minutes in a short time. With the help of the instant body technique, the time can even be shortened. But such extreme running cannot last long, and it is good to be able to run for 2 or 3 minutes. This is the real test of being a jonin. At the entrance of Higano Onsen, Yudo Murayama put his left hand in his pocket and held a pocket watch in his right hand, looking at the time. Swish, ha, Yudo Murayama let out a light, ha. Smoke surged beside him, and Wuxin's figure emerged from the smoke. As soon as he appeared, his figure staggered and fell to the ground. Yudo Murayama caught the fallen Wuxin with one step, looking at Wuxin who had lost consciousness. He actually did it. It's really troublesome. It seems that this teacher can't be a teacher anymore. Yudo Murayama showed a helpless look on his face, carried the unconscious Wuxin on his back, and walked towards the Higano Onsen. Men's bath. Wuxin woke up slowly and found himself soaking in the water. His long and soft hair was held in the hand of Yudo Murayama, who looked lazy next to him. Awake, Yudo Murayama noticed that Wuxin had woken up and loosened his hand holding Wuxin's hair. Wuxin frowned and gathered his hair behind his head. Don't get me wrong. If you don't hold your hair, you'll slip into the bathtub and drown. That'll be troublesome. Murayama Yudo explained lazily, turned his eyes, looked at Wuxin's smooth long hair carefully, and curled his lips. Your hair is quite smooth, but it's too long and not refined enough, which will affect the concealment and lurking in the mission. Wuxin gathered his hair, heard the words, looked at Murayama Yudo's brown refined short hair, and said softly. Teacher, it's not polite to comment on others, right? Haha, you're quite stubborn. Murayama Yudo was choked by Wuxin and couldn't help but touch his nose. The hot springs were steaming, and Murayama Yudo's lazy look became a little more serious. He said in a deep voice. Boy, how did you get here from school in 10 minutes? Even if you have mastered the instant body technique, you can't do it with your physique and chakra. The instant body technique plus the rapid march. Wuxin confessed honestly. As Murayama Yudo judged, Wuxin's chakra was not enough to support such a fast arrival here. The extreme pressure made Wuxin even faint. Most of the Jonins in the Hidden Mist village are the best among the Jonins. If you can't pass the test of being a Jonin, then there is no Jonin to guide and teach ninjutsu. And if you go to the mission hall to accept the mission, the genin can only accept C-level and D-level missions. If you want to be above B-level, you must find a Chunin leader. It can be said that the future ninja career depends on your own exploration. There is no such thing as failing the test and being sent back to the ninja school to retake the course in the Hidden Mist village, nor is there a saying that if you fail the test, you will be reassigned to be a Jonin. The opportunity to be guided by a Jonin is just this once, which is why Wuxin gritted his teeth and persisted. Instantaneous body technique plus rapid march. Ha 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 ha, you said it quite lightly. I like your personality and I recognize you. Murayama Yudo was amused by Wuxin's words, and at the same time he had a deeper understanding of Wuxin's perseverance. Boy, what ninjutsu do you know now? Murayama Yudo recognized Wuxin and began to investigate Wuxin's abilities. The 3 body techniques taught in the ninja school, as well as the more advanced instantaneous body techniques, the hidden mist technique, the assassination technique, the rope untying technique, the disguise. Stop, talk about ninjutsu above D level. Murayama Yudo had no interest in understanding the ninjutsu of the ninja school, so he quickly stopped Wuxin from talking and asked the key points. Water clone technique, water substitute technique, water prison technique, water curtain, water whip, perception technique, mind reading technique, healing technique. Wuxin simply classified the fog perception technique into the perception technique without forcibly distinguishing it. The perception technique is to perceive the surroundings through chakra. The advantage is that it is fast. After the seal is made, the eyes are closed and the perception begins. The disadvantage is that the chakra consumption is high and the time is short. The perception ends when the eyes are opened. If the enemy situation changes and you want to search for the enemy again, you have to start the perception technique again. The fog perception technique is to perceive the surroundings by making fog. The perception lasts for a long time and consumes less. The disadvantage is that it is slow and you have to wait for the fog to spread. I know about the perception technique, but have you mastered the mind reading technique? And the healing technique? When Yudo Murayama heard Wuxin's words, his eyes widened and his mouth opened unconsciously. He knew that the person in front of him was a genius, but he didn't expect him to be so genius. After being shocked, Murayama Yudo noticed his situation, straightened his face, and praised. As expected of Wuyu and Hayata Komi's son, he is really outstanding. At this moment, Murayama Yudo was very glad that Wuxin completed the test he arranged on a whim, otherwise, he would probably lose such an excellent disciple. This child will definitely become an important figure in the Kurigakure village, and then I can also rise with the tide. Teacher Yudo, do you know my parents? Wuxin was a little surprised that Yudo Murayama could say his parents' names. Ah, we have completed the mission together, and I can say that I am deeply impressed by your father's tracking and perception ability. You have perfectly inherited your parents' talents, and they are combined into one. Yudo Murayama's light words made Wuxin feel close to him. After all, he knew his parents, and they were both Kurigakure ninjas. Although his parents were only special jonins, and there was still a gap between them and jonins, there were still two words in special jonins. Wuxin, mind reading is a ninjutsu that very few people can master, even in the village's intelligence department. You can learn this ninjutsu at your age, which means you have excellent spiritual talent. However, your talent is not limited to this. You can also learn medical ninjutsu and healing ninjutsu. Healing ninjutsu is a prerequisite for learning A-level medical ninjutsu, which shows that your medical ninjutsu talent is also very good. Wuxin, which direction do you want to develop in the future? Like your father, become an excellent ninja with tracking and perception expertise. Or like your mother, become a ninja in the field of medical assistance. After Murayama Yudo learned about Wuxin's situation, he really had a heart of love for talent and was concerned about Wuxin's future. As a senior ninja, Wuxin's teacher-student relationship ended after he became a junior ninja. But Wuxin's future achievements are related to his reputation as a senior ninja teacher. If a ninja who is feared by the ninja world can be cultivated, the benefits are simply beyond imagination. Teacher Yongren, my water-style ninjutsu is not worth mentioning compared to healing and mind-reading perception. Wuxin has been practicing ninjutsu since he was young. He has basically learned everything that his parents know. With this resource here, as a soul-crossing person, how could he let it go? It's just that the few ninjutsu that his parents know have basically been learned by Wuxin. Now Wuxin urgently needs a new teacher to guide him to learn new ninjutsu. No, at your age, you can learn and master so many water-style ninjutsu, which is also very good. Most of the water-style ninjutsu you have mastered are sea level, which is also the limit of your current ability. For more advanced water-style ninjutsu, more chakra is needed to perform, which is not something you can use with your physique. Murayama Yongren objectively commented on Wuxin's current situation. At the age of 9, more advanced water-style ninjutsu is not something he can easily master with his physique. However, Wuxin, you are not an ordinary person, you cannot be viewed with conventional eyes. At the end, Murayama Yudo realized that something was wrong. The water-style ninjutsu that Wuxin currently mastered was not something that he could easily master and use at his age. Wuxin, gather at the mission hall at 8:30 tomorrow morning to meet the other two teammates. At the same time, let me have a more intuitive understanding of your strength. In the end, Murayama Yudo decided to observe Wuxin's situation in detail through practical tasks, so that he could teach him according to his condition and fulfill his responsibilities as a senior ninja. Early morning. At the entrance of the mission hall in the Hidden Mist village, nobles in gorgeous clothes, merchants with jewels and gems, and groups of tall ninjas are constantly entering and leaving the mission hall. In a pavilion not far from the street of the mission hall, 7 or 8 teenagers about 10 years old, wearing ninja forehead protectors and various types of clothing, leaned against the pillars of the pavilion and waited quietly. At the entrance of the mission hall, Wuxin was dressed neatly, carrying a backpack, waiting for the guidance of the senior ninja Murayama Yudo, while observing the guards and people coming in and out. Are these people here to entrust the mission? Wuxin, who was bored, observed those people who were dressed gorgeously and did not look like ninjas, and guessed secretly. Wuxin looked at his pocket watch. It was 8:29. He looked up and looked around on the street and saw the figure of the person he was waiting for. 8:29, Mr. Yudo Murayama is really punctual. We agreed to meet at 8:30 yesterday, and Wuxin arrived at the mission hall at 8:15. He had a deep understanding of Mr. Yudo Murayama's sense of time. As Yudo Murayama appeared, the two boys in the pavilion walked quickly to the door of the mission hall. Follow me. Wuxin Murayama wore a jonin vest and carried a backpack. He called Wuxin when he passed by. He was not lazy at all when he was taking a hot spring bath yesterday. He was capable and walked straight into the mission hall. Yes, X3. While Wuxin answered, the two boys next to him also answered and followed behind Yudo Murayama. There are 3 floors in the mission hall. The first floor is crowded with people. There are almost half ninjas wearing forehead protectors and half travelers wearing luxurious clothes. It can be seen that the mission commission situation in the Hidden Mist village seems to be very good. Murayama Yudo did not go to the office desk on the first floor to receive the mission. He took Wuxin and the other 2 to the door and stairs. There were 2 guarding ninjas at the door and stairs, ignoring Yudo Murayama and Wuxin. Yudo Murayama led the three people past the guards, walked up the stairs to the second floor, stopped at a door with the word, "Elder," on it, and knocked on the door. "Come in." A somewhat old voice came from inside the door. Yudo Murayama pushed the door open, walked to the middle of the office with the three little ones, and bowed slightly to the old man sitting at the desk. "Master Yuenshi, X3. Wuxin looked at the respectful posture of his teacher Yudo Murayama and the two young men who seemed to be teammates, and bowed slightly to the old man named Yuenshi a little late, and at the same time muttered in his heart, secretly saying, "Is this the elder Yuenshi? I didn't expect him to be so old at this time." Yuenshi, the elder of Kurigakure village, is rumored to have served as the village elder during the first Mizukage period. If the Mizukage is in charge of military affairs, then Yuenshi is in charge of internal affairs. It can be said that the Yuenshi has the same rights and status as the Mizukage. Important matters in the village need to consult the Yuenshi's opinion. The Yuenshi with wrinkles on his face looks a little old, but his eyes are bright and there is a faint smile on his face, giving people a feeling of a kind grandfather. Three little guys. It seems that the young man who just graduated has passed your test. The Yuenshi glanced at Wuxin and seemed to be very familiar with Yudo Murayama. "Yes, the newcomer is very good," Yudo Murayama replied respectfully. The Yuenshi seemed to be in a good mood. On his wrinkled face, there was a faint smile, and he said softly, "Haha, it looks really good. Yudo, it might be better for the new member to join and start from the D and C level tasks on the first floor." Yudo Murayama couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart when he heard the words. He has always only accepted tasks above B level, and the Yuenshi has never told him to accept D and C level tasks in the past. Wuxin had just joined the team, and from what Master Yuan said, he wanted to be more stable in training the newcomer Wuxin. As an excellent and responsible Jonin, Yudo Murayama had his own opinion. After a little consideration, he said in a deep voice, "Master Yuan, D and C level missions are the work of rookies. Our team, including the new member Wuxin, are all elites. We should share more dangerous missions for the village." Murayama Yudo tactfully rejected Master Yuan's suggestion. "Yes, Master Yuan, we have always only performed missions above B level." A short-haired boy behind Yudo Murayama also spoke up for it. Master Yuan fell silent after hearing the words of Jonin Yudo Murayama and his student. After about 5 seconds, Master Yuan said softly, "Okay, there is a B-level mission that needs to be handled." After Master Yuan finished speaking, he took out the top scroll from the neatly arranged scrolls on the small table next to his desk. "Take one and put it on the desk. Most of the C and D level tasks do not involve confrontation between ninjas, and can be chosen by ninjas at will. The confidentiality requirements are not very high. However, for tasks above B level, ninja confrontations often occur, which require strict confidentiality. Only after accepting the task can you know what the task content is. After checking the task scroll, even if you feel that the task is beyond your ability, you must execute and complete it. You must execute it after checking it. If the task fails, there will be a punishment, and someone needs to be responsible." Murayama Yudo walked forward, picked up the task scroll, opened it on the spot and checked it. After about 10 seconds, Murayama Yudo closed the scroll, bowed slightly to Yuenshi, and said respectfully, "Yumao's class will successfully complete the task. Well, go." Yuenshi closed his eyes, seemed a little tired, and replied softly. Murayama Yudo turned around and left the office with the three little ones, went downstairs and walked out of the task hall, and walked straight to the gate of the Hidden Mist village. On the street, the short-haired boy who had been fighting for a mission in the Yuenshi office looked Wuxin up and down and asked Murayama Yudo, "Teacher Yudo, how strong is this newcomer? Is he capable? Will he not hold us back? It's a good opportunity for you guys to get to know each other on the way." Murayama Yudo did not introduce them to each other, nor did he say anything about everyone uniting and being companions in the future. After saying a simple introduction, he hurried on his way. Wuxin did not respond to the short-haired boy's words. Since completing the weird genin graduation exam and officially becoming a genin, he felt unfamiliar with this familiar village where he had lived for 9 years. The harmonious life before seemed to be an illusion. The boy with short silver hair asked Murayama Yudo, but got a soft answer. He turned to look at Wuxin and said viciously. Hey, your name is Wuxin, right? My name is Mikazuna. Remember, don't hold me back, otherwise, I will let you know what a senior is. Compared to Mikazuna, another handsome boy with a blue hedgehog head smiled warmly. Wuxin, my name is Shuilian. I am good at manipulating ninja tools and setting traps. Please take care of me in the future. Shuilian's words were gentle. Not only did she not act like a senior, but she was even more humble. At the same time, from the name without a surname, it can be judged that she is a civilian ninja. I am Wuxin, I am good at perception and mutual care. Wuxin also smiled back at Shuilian's gentleness and explained his strengths in a low voice. At the same time, he turned his head and looked at the one called Mikazuna, smiling. And Mikazuna Sr., hello, please rest assured, I will not hold you back. It's just that your chakra is too thin, and it seems that it is not enough to support you to serve as a senior to teach the newcomers. Although combat power cannot be completely judged by the amount of chakra, a large amount of chakra is definitely more advantageous than a thin one. Wuxin's implication is to satirize Mikazuna for being too weak. Mikazuna was somewhat pleased with Wuxin's first half of the words, and a smug look rose on her face. Unexpectedly, Wuxin changed the subject and the next sentence was a naked provocation. Mikazuna was stunned for 2 seconds in disbelief, then her face changed, and she said angrily. What did you say? I said your chakra is very weak. Chapter 11. I said your chakra is very weak. Wuxin curled his lips in disdain, paused teasingly, and reiterated. Mikazuna stared at Wuxin with fierce eyes, but the corners of her mouth were raised, revealing a grim smile, and her chakra fluctuated violently. Stop talking nonsense. Companions should help each other instead of fighting meaninglessly. The words of the senior ninja Murayama Yuto extinguished the gunpowder smell in the team. Wuxin wanted to continue to provoke the words but endured it, but his eyes were still disdainful. Mikazuna kept staring at Wuxin, and seeing Wuxin's disdainful eyes, the veins on her forehead jumped again, but she didn't say anything. It can be seen that the senior ninja Murayama Yuto has a deterrent power in their hearts. While talking, several people have already walked to the gate of the hidden mist village. Murayama Yuto stopped in front of the gate, took out the task scroll, and opened it again to check. Before in the Yuanshi office, Murayama Yuto looked at it for about 10 seconds. This time, Murayama Yuto watched for about a minute and took out a strange item with patterns from the scroll. Then he put the patterned item and the scroll into his backpack and said with a serious face. B-level mission, guard the noble Kawaguchi family of the water country for 3 months. The Kawaguchi family, is it the Kawaguchi family of the finance minister of the water country? Mikazuna asked softly with a cold face. The previous anger and impatience disappeared, and he adjusted his mentality in a short time. As a ninja, he knew more about the water country than Shuilian and Wuxin. Murayama Yuto nodded slightly. Yes, it is the Kawaguchi family. The Kawaguchi family's mine has been repeatedly attacked by unknown persons recently. The attackers are extremely cruel. Not only did they rob the ore, but they also killed several miners, causing the miners to be afraid to go down the mine to mine. Since the head of the Kawaguchi family died unexpectedly recently and the new head is young, the client suspects that someone is coveting the Kawaguchi family's property, so he issued a commission. This time the mission time is 3 months. The content is to protect the normal operation of the mine, resist invasion, and protect the miners. Secondly, if the identity of the attacker can be investigated and eliminated, it can also be considered as completing the mission. If the attacker can be investigated and killed, there is no need to waste 3 months, right? Shui Lian asked softly to confirm the mission. Wu Xin did not ask questions. Although it was his first time to do a mission, he keenly noticed some abnormalities. The old head of the family died, the new head of the family was young, the mine began to be attacked, and the client suspected that someone was coveting the family property. Thinking this way, the scope of the attackers is narrowed down. Who else would covet the family owner's property, except for the family owner's retainers, opponents, and fools? Well, it shouldn't be that simple. Wuxin thought about it secretly, wanting to know more information. Murayama Yuto glanced at the 3 disciples, and finally landed on Shuilian, and said in a deep voice. Yes, if we can investigate and eliminate the attackers, we don't have to stay here for a long time. Teacher Yuto, How old is the new family owner? Is the client the new family owner? Wuxin asked about the client's information. Besides the family owner, who can afford to hire a ninja? What a stupid question. Mikazuna on the side curled her lips and sneered. Humph. Murayama Yudo saw Mikazuna stubbornly excluding the newcomer Wuxin, and couldn't help but snorted coldly, and murderous intent surged from his body, and the three people on the scene suddenly felt like falling into an ice cave. Wuxin's feeling of oppression lasted only for a moment and then disappeared, but Mikazuna's forehead was sweating and her body seemed to be shaking. Murayama Yudo had a stern face and was silent for more than 10 seconds before he put away his murderous aura. Mikazuna's clothes were soaked with sweat, showing the pressure and fear in her heart. Murayama Yudo returned to his calm teacher's appearance, but his face was a little uneasy, and he said, "The client is Mrs. Kawaguchi Sachiko, the wife of the old head of the Kawaguchi family. As for the age of the new head of the family, I don't know, but I guess he is not very old, otherwise the old head of the family would not have issued the commission." Murayama Yudo returned to the task, without the previous oppressive feeling, and answered Wuxin's question softly. Then he stretched out his right hand and touched his chin. After a few seconds of silence as if thinking, he pursed his lips, turned around and walked towards the gate of the hidden mist village, waving his hand as he walked. We will know the specific information when we reach the territory of the Kawaguchi family. Let's go, let's go. Yes, X3. The three people who experienced the murderous aura of the Jonin immediately responded and followed the footsteps of Yuto Murayama and strode out of the hidden mist village. On the way, the team was harmonious throughout the journey without a single quarrel. Wuxin, who had practiced ninjutsu since childhood, had never left the village. He looked around on the road, especially on the road the team walked through the villages and observed them carefully. Before they knew it, they had been traveling for most of the day and arrived at the Kawaguchi family's territory. After Wuxin and his party passed through a rice field and village houses, they stopped in front of a castle gate built on a small hill. The castle had a stone wall about 3 meters high and a gate that looked sturdy. It was called a castle only compared to the thatched houses in the rice fields. According to Wuxin's eyes, it actually looked more like a mountain village. Ninja-sama, what are you doing here? The two young men holding long spears in front of the city gate saw Wuxin and his party wearing ninja forehead protectors and asked nervously. We are ninjas from the Hidden Mist village and are invited here by Mrs. Kawaguchi Sachiko. Murayama Yudo answered quietly with a calm face, and at the same time took out a family crest-shaped item that he had taken out of the scroll before and shook it in front of the two guards. On the city gate tower, a samurai with a long sword hanging from his waist jumped down from the 3-meter-high city wall, walked forward and bowed slightly to Yudo Murayama, and said respectfully, I am Jinko Delang, Sir Ninja, please follow me. Thank you, Yudo Murayama replied expressionlessly. Wuxin felt that these guards and samurai-looking people seemed to be very afraid of Yudo Murayama, and couldn't help but wonder in his heart, thinking, in Kurigakure, it seems that I haven't heard of Yudo Murayama's name much, so why are you so afraid? Wuxin forgot the fate of the Bloody Mist village. The ninjas of Kurigakure have been killing each other since the ninja school, and most of the ninjas on the list are cruel and ruthless executioners. Not to mention whether the reputation is far-reaching or not, in the land of water, there is absolutely no one who is not afraid of Kurigakure ninja. Wuxin and the others followed behind Yudo Murayama. Following the samurai's lead, they soon arrived at the magnificent mansion in the castle, which looked like the main building. The samurai who led the way seemed to have a high status in the Kawaguchi clan, and none of the guards in the castle stopped or questioned them along the way. The samurai turned around and whispered to Yudo Murayama respectfully. Please wait for a moment, ninjas. Okay. Yasudo Murayama spoke coldly and was frugal with words. After receiving the reply, the samurai stepped forward and whispered a few words to the guard in front of the mansion. The guard nodded and turned around and ran into the house. After a while, the guard who went in to report the news ran out and shouted. The head of the family wants to see you. The head of the family invites you. Please. The warrior named Jinko Delang walked to the side, stretched out his hand and made a gesture of invitation, then walked into the door, slightly surpassing Murayama Yudo by half a body length, and continued to lead the way for the few people. Crossing the yard, walking all the way to the door of a gorgeous house, Jinko Delang stopped at the door, turned sideways and made a gesture of invitation, and said respectfully, "Please come in, the head of the family is waiting for you inside." Murayama Yudo did not answer, and walked straight into the house with Wuxin and the other two. On the tatami against the wall on the east side of the house, a woman about 30 years old and a child about 4 or 5 years old, both wearing embroidered robes, sat upright. "My humble concubine Kawaguchi Sachiko and my son Kawaguchi Takashi greet you all. Please forgive me for not coming to meet you from afar." The woman and the child knelt on the tatami, slightly bent over, and had a humble attitude. Yudo Murayama was not carried away by the other party's humility. He immediately knelt on one knee, with a respectful attitude of a subordinate meeting a leader, and said in a deep voice, "Greetings, madam. We are here at your request to be driven by you. Please don't be polite and issue orders. We will definitely do our best to share your worries." Yudo Murayama's words were respectful, and he was completely different from the coldness he had shown to the samurai guards before. Wuxin, Mai Kitano, and Shuilian behind him also knelt on one knee to salute. After the polite salute, Sachiko Kawaguchi said faintly, "I have heard of Yudo Murayama's reputation as a jonin for a long time. With your arrival, our Kawaguchi clan can rest assured." Yudo Murayama humbly asked Madame Kawaguchi to issue orders again. The courtesy of the two surprised Wuxin a little, and he thought, "Is Yudo Murayama famous, or is it just a humble flattery of the nobles? Yudo Murayama is a jonin, and his strength must be good at this level. However, the problem is that in the village, Yudo Murayama doesn't seem to have a very famous name. The only famous jonins in Kurigakure are the 7 jonins who hold ninja swords and a few others." After Yudo Murayama and Mrs. Kawaguchi Sachiko exchanged pleasantries, Mrs. Kawaguchi got to the point and asked for Yudo Murayama's team to go to the Kawaguchi mine stronghold that had been attacked before to guard it. She also summoned the samurai named Jinko Delang who led the way before to continue to lead the way for Wuxin and others. After receiving Mrs. Kawaguchi's instructions, Wuxin and the other 4 followed the man named Jinko Delang obediently, walked out of the castle, and headed for the Kawaguchi mine stronghold. After leaving the city gate, they walked west for nearly an hour before arriving at the Kawaguchi mine stronghold. The Kawaguchi mine stronghold is a small village built near the center of a hilly valley. The small village is surrounded by a circle of fences, with 2 east and west exits, and watchtowers at the 4 corners. Not far from the village, there are some excavated caves. In front of the caves, there are many warriors with long swords on their waists and whips in their hands, like supervisors and guards. From time to time, villagers push carts full of black ore out of the caves and pile the ore in the ore pile not far from the village. Jinko Delang led Wuxin and others to arrive, introduced them to the stronghold manager of the mountain village, and then said goodbye and left. Murayama Yudo and the stronghold manager met and briefly understood the situation. Then he arranged Wuxin and the other 2 to observe the mine and began to perform the guarding mission. At the east gate of the village, a sentry like a city gate tower was built on the gate of the fence wall. Shuilian, Wuxin, and Gaidongmai stood side by side in the sentry. "Wuxin, you guard here and wait and see. The 2 of us will go down to patrol and investigate, what do you think?" Shuilian has a blue hedgehog head, green eyes, a beautiful and gentle face, and discusses work in a soft voice. "Okay." Wuxin had no objection and replied softly. "Yeah." Mai Kazuna also had no objection, jumped down from the watchtower, and strode into the canyon. Shuilian smiled at Wuxin, and also jumped down, entering the canyon from another direction, staggering with Mai Kazuna. Seeing that the 2 were serious, Wuxin also observed the canyon honestly. In the canyon, weak miners pushed carts slowly. Samurai whipped the miners from time to time. It's really a cannibalistic world. Wuxin couldn't help shaking his head slightly when he saw this, and closed his hands to form the seal of the future, closed his eyes, and his chakra fluctuated. Wuxin's perception technique was slow, and the range gradually advanced from the surrounding body, 10 meters in radius, 20 meters in radius, until the radius was close to 200 meters. It lasted for about 10 seconds, and Wuxin opened his eyes. There is no threat in the range. Perception technique. Record some chakra or other characteristics within the range, and the next time you use perception technique, if a stranger sneaks in, you can detect it immediately. It's just that Wuxin is limited by the amount of chakra, and the current perception the range of perception is only over 200 meters at full power, which has great limitations. Wuxin's perception range only covers the mountain stronghold and a small part of the canyon. It cannot cover the entire canyon, let alone penetrate the mountain to observe the people in the cave. About an hour later, my Guidong and Shui Lian returned one after another. No abnormality was found. The same is true here. After returning to the sentry post, the two checked their observation intelligence with each other. No abnormality was found. Wuxin also reported softly. Swish, swish. Murayama Yudo climbed up to the second-floor sentry post at the village gate with the sound of breaking through the air. The Kawaguchi family has increased the guards here, and the enemy will not easily launch an attack. Of course, correspondingly, if an attack occurs again, the number of enemies will be greater. After climbing up the sentry post, Murayama Yudo shared a guard intelligence provided by the Kawaguchi family. After speaking, he turned around and waved. It's going to be dark soon. The Kawaguchi family has prepared dinner. Follow me. After the words fell, the senior ninja Yudo Murayama jumped and headed into the village. It seemed that Yudo Murayama came here specially to call the three people for dinner. Yes, X3. Wuxin and the other two responded and followed Yudo Murayama. Soon the team arrived at the center of the village, the only three-story house in the village. The village stronghold manager provided food for several people. After Wuxin and others had a full meal, the sky gradually darkened. The east and west gates of the village need to be on duty. Shuilian, you two will be responsible for the west gate. Wuxin, you and I will be responsible for the east gate. As usual, we work in shifts of 4 hours. We must be energetic and don't make mistakes. The senior ninja Yudo Murayama, who had eaten and drunk enough, explained the task very professionally. Yes, the three people replied respectfully. Let's go. Murayama Yudo waved his hand, and the four disappeared on the spot, and began to prepare for the night watch. Wuxin quietly followed Murayama Yudo, heading towards the east sentry post, starting the first mission of his ninja career. Night. Starlight shines on the east gate sentry post. Wuxin stands at the edge of the sentry post, counting the stars out of boredom. Behind him, Yudo Murayama lies on the floor, breathing faintly. B-level mission, it feels like this. I thought it would be so dangerous. The night shift is divided into 3 time periods, from 8 o'clock to midnight, from midnight to 4 o'clock, and from 4 o'clock to early morning. Wuxin is on duty in the second shift. Wuxin only slept for a while in the first shift and still feels a little tired. According to the teaching of the ninja school, ninjas attack at night mostly in the early morning. Yudo Murayama asked Wuxin to work in the second shift, which is actually to take care of Wuxin. After 4 o'clock, Yudo Murayama will wake up and take over to deal with the dangerous early morning period. Shwo shwo. Ha, Wuxin exclaimed softly. In the quiet night, Murin's faint voice sounded, which aroused Wuxin's vigilance. Chakra surged in his body, and he formed seals with both hands to perform perception. 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters, 50 meters. Are there really people? 14, 15, 16 people. Only one of them has chakra. Wuxin's perception ninjutsu actually detected someone moving within the range. Wuxin gently patted the sleeping Murayama Yudo, who instantly opened his eyes. Teacher Yudo, there are unknown people approaching, a total of 16 people. One of them has chakra, I'll go investigate. Wuxin leaned against Murayama Yudo and whispered softly. 2 people are on duty, and if there is an abnormal situation, they must remind their teammates to be alert. If they rush out to investigate, it is easy to cause unprepared teammates to be captured and killed. Murayama Yudo had bloodshot eyes, and it seemed that his sleep condition was not very good. Hearing this, he nodded to Wuxin. Wuxin jumped off the sentry post, quietly sneaked into the night, and touched the people who were sneaking towards the village. The mountain village was pitch black at night, and the situation within a few meters could only be seen with the moonlight. Wuxin, who was silent, quickly found the place where he had sensed the strangers before, hiding in the night and observing these uninvited guests. In the night, 16 people quietly entered the mountain village. These people all had long swords on their waists, and many of them even carried quivers and longbows. Wuxin couldn't see the faces of these people clearly, but the outlines of the long swords on their waists and the longbows as tall as a person could still be seen. At night, carrying weapons and sneaking around, Wuxin knew that these people must be ill-intentioned, so he took out kunai and shuriken from the ninja bag behind his waist. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of breaking through the air sounded, and several kunai and shuriken shot into the crowd. Puff, puff. Wow, I'm hurt. The muffled sound of a few sharp blades piercing the body, along with the men's screams of pain, cut through the night. Asshole, light the torches. Accompanied by a furious shout, several piles of torches lit up in the night. In the light of the fire, a team of more than 10 people, 3 of whom had kunai and shurikens stabbed in their bodies, and blood was gushing out. These people were less than 30 meters away from the gate of the mountain stronghold. Warriors, it's time to show your martial arts, kill. At the front of the team, a man with an ancient samurai's fringe hairstyle looked at the injured team members, drew out his long sword, roared, and rushed towards the mountain stronghold. Kill, kill. Inspired by the samurai leader, shouts of killing suddenly broke out, and the attackers drew their long swords and rushed towards the village. Wuxin, who was lying on the ground not far away and hiding in the night, was a little stunned by this scene. Isn't this a bit too stupid? Wuxin didn't know much about samurai, but knew that he had to repel this group of people. He quickly got up from the ground, took out a kunai, and shot at the running samurai. Swish, swish, swish. The sound of breaking through the air was heard everywhere, and Wuxin's arm swung quickly, shooting more than 10 kunai in a few seconds. The samurai were attacked from the side, and some were caught off guard. They panicked and shouted all kinds of things. Ninja, I'm injured. Run, escape. Several samurai fell down. What Wuxin didn't expect was that after they found that they were attacked by ninjas, they immediately turned around and ran away. The injured ones limped, but their speed was not slow at all. In a few seconds, the samurai team of more than 10 people, except for 2 corpses on the ground, was left with only a man with a bangs hairstyle. Wuxin looked at these samurai who were acting like a drama, and his original fear and caution disappeared. With a jump, he came to a place not far in front of the samurai in the field. Hey, your companions have all run away, aren't you going to run away? Wu Xin asked calmly and relaxedly. On the second floor of the city gate next to him, there was a senior ninja named Murayama Yudo lurking there to plunder the enemy. How can I be compared to those lowly foot soldiers? Imitation. The samurai with the hairstyle of the moon hair stood in front of him with his sword in both hands, staring at Wuxin with his eyes, while moving his feet and slowly moving forward. Fight to the last. Seeing this, Wuxin reached into the ninja tool bag behind his waist with both hands and threw 2 shurikens at the samurai. Ding, clang. The samurai with the hairstyle of the moon hair swung his long sword and easily knocked off the 2 shurikens. Ha! Wuxin exclaimed softly and found that this samurai leader did not seem to be a mediocre hand. The samurai with the hairstyle of the moon hair looked solemn, slowly raised the long sword above his head, and bent his knees slightly. Suddenly, with a swift and light leap, he jumped directly over a distance of nearly 5 meters, and at the same time, the long sword chopped down, even bringing up the sound of wind. Wuxin was already alert when the samurai's knees bent. Facing the samurai's slash, Wuxin took a step forward, holding the kunai in both hands and crossed, and blocked the long sword that chopped down. Hey ha! Quote. The samurai was skilled in swordplay and changed his moves quickly. After a loud roar, he swung his long sword downwards and slashed to the left at the same time. The long sword and Wuxin's kunai collided and produced a few sparks. The samurai pulled the long sword back completely and faced Wuxin sideways, but the tip of the sword was facing Wuxin's chest, and suddenly thrust forward. Wuxin reacted very quickly. After the samurai pulled back the long sword, he jumped sideways to get away from the samurai and avoided the assassination. Wuxin, who had pulled a step away, felt unsafe and jumped back 2 more steps. The confrontation between the two seemed to be long-lasting, but in fact it was lightning fast. Wuxin understood that the samurai in front of him had extraordinary swordplay and was not an easy opponent. Wuxin shot the kunai in both hands at the samurai, and quickly formed seals with his free hands. After the samurai chopped off the shuriken thrown by Wuxin, he could not move in time, and there were only 2 bangs, and 5 wushins appeared on the field. 4 of the wushins ran, and formed a 5-pointed star formation with the Wuxin in the original place, surrounding the samurai. The samurai with the kunai in his hands stood upright in front of him, turned his head and looked around. The 5 Wushins held the kunai in their hands, rushed forward silently, and attacked the samurai. Do you think I don't know which one is the real body? Die, scum. The samurai with the kunai in his hands aimed at Wuxin, who had been in the middle before, rushed forward and stabbed Wuxin quickly, piercing him. Bang! Wuxin, who was pierced by the samurai's long sword, turned into smoke, and the samurai's face suddenly changed. Puff! The samurai with the tufted hair had no time to change his moves, and a kunai pierced through his chest and went through his body. Wuxin, who succeeded in one strike, released his ninjutsu, and the 3 clones turned into smoke and dissipated, leaving only Wuxin's real body behind the samurai. The samurai's eyes were wide open, his face was full of unwillingness, and he knelt on the ground without strength. Wuxin behind the samurai shook his head slightly and said, "The one whose center has not moved is the real one. Could it be that simple?" When Wuxin performed the clone technique, he staggered a body position, and with a simple trick, he killed the samurai with sharp swordsmanship with a clone technique. Wuxin killed the samurai, but he didn't forget the main business. He made seals with both hands. After nearly 30 seals, Wuxin separated his hands, put the index and middle fingers of his left hand together and stood upright in front of his chin. He maintained the seal with one hand and pressed his right hand on the kneeling samurai's body. Ninjutsu. Mind-reading technique. Mind-reading technique, a ninjutsu that can read the memory of another person without any device. Wuxin has mastered this ninjutsu for a short time. This is the first time he has practiced it except for practicing at home. Wuxin has been the top of the grade for many years, which makes Wuxin's father understand that this is not Wuxin's limit. He began to teach Wuxin his specialty ninjutsu, mind-reading technique. As for the practice method, he picked up a human head, put it on the table, and let Wuxin practice. Living people, unrotten corpses, or only a head can all be read. Compared with pressing the head during practice, the target of this reading is a complete person, which is simpler than practice. Wuxin closed his eyes tightly and easily entered the samurai's memory, skipping most of the previous ones and checking the recent memories. Under the moonlight, a young man pressed his right hand on the head of a kneeling samurai. Both sides were motionless, and the scene was a bit creepy. About half an hour later, Wuxin opened his eyes and released his hand pressing the samurai's head. Did you read any useful information? Murayama Yudo stood beside Wuxin at some point, and asked when he saw Wuxin opened his eyes. Wuxin was startled by the abrupt words of Murayama Yudo next to him. After reacting, he wiped the sweat from his forehead and replied. This samurai's name is Koizumi Saburo, a samurai of the Ikawa family, and he obeys a man named Ikawa Aimasa. Wuxin's forehead was covered with sweat, and he was tired because he had been performing the mind-reading technique for too long. Ishikawa Aimasa, Mrs. Kawaguchi's family. Murayama Yudo was a little surprised. He didn't ask if the information was correct. The information read by the mind-reading technique, even if it was handed over to the village's analysis class, would probably be analyzed like this. It was information that would never be wrong. Mrs. Kawaguchi's family. It seems that the situation is a bit complicated. Wuxin heard Murayama Yudo's words and immediately realized the complexity of the matter. If the Ishikawa family is Mrs. Kawaguchi's family, then Mrs. Kawaguchi's entrusting ninjas to guard is very intriguing. If the attacker behind the scenes is Mrs. Kawaguchi's family, the Ishikawa family, this matter needs to be reported to Mrs. Kawaguchi. Murayama Yudo's eyes were deep, and he realized the relationship. In the land of water, women will take the surname of their husband's family after getting married. Mrs. Kawaguchi entrusted ninjas to guard the mine, which should be on the side of her husband's family, the Kawaguchi clan. If the identity of the attacker behind the scenes is confirmed, it will not be difficult for the ninja to eliminate it. The calculation requirements for this B-level mission are: the first is to guard for 3 months, and the second is to investigate and eliminate the attacker. The identity of the attacker has been investigated, but the identity is a bit sensitive. It is better to consult the client before making a decision. After thinking for a while, Yudo Murayama continued softly. After dawn, we will report to Mrs. Kawaguchi. Wuxin, you have performed well, go and rest, and I will be on duty next. Yes. After receiving the praise from the senior ninja, Wuxin responded calmly, and after a few jumps, he arrived at the gate tower of the east gate. Tired, Wuxin lay on the quilt on the floor, closed his eyes, and muttered in his heart, wondering if this 3-month guard mission would be completed the next day. Wuxin, who was a little new to the mission, could not hide his fatigue and soon fell asleep in a daze. Early morning. The crowing of chickens in the mountain village was heroic and woke Wuxin up. Wuxin rubbed his eyes and sat up. Are you awake? Pack up and follow me to the river-mouth castle. Murayama Yudo was sitting cross-legged on the floor, leaning on his long sword. When he saw Wuxin stand up, he immediately stood up. Yes, Wuxin promised sleepily, washed up quickly, and folded the bedding into his backpack. Heko Castle. In the main hall, the beautiful Mrs. Kawaguchi and the young head of the Kawaguchi family knelt on the mat in the middle of the tatami, while Wuxin and Yudo Murayama knelt below, looking like retainers. After listening to Yudo Murayama's report, Mrs. Kawaguchi looked angry. After a long silence, Mrs. Kawaguchi bowed and saluted and said softly, "Thank you for your help. The guarding mission ends here. The Kawaguchi family will pay the subsequent commission. This, Madam, the guarding period for this mission is 3 months. Our Kurigakure is a village of integrity and responsibility. This completes the mission. I am really ashamed. May I ask if you need?" Yudo Murayama spoke respectfully, and at the end, he made a gesture of wiping his neck. Wuxin sat beside Yudo Murayama, feeling a little unhappy in his heart, but said nothing on his face. Mrs. Kawaguchi shook her head slightly, and her expression changed from anger at the beginning to sadness. She said, "No, we will handle the family affairs of the Kawaguchi family properly. Mr. Yongren, I heard that the creed of ninjas is to keep secrets. Please don't publicize this matter." Mrs. Kawaguchi really rejected Murayama Yongren's proposal. After all, she was married into the Ikawa family. Although she had changed her surname to Kawaguchi, how could she just kill her parents and brothers in her natal family? Besides, the Ikawa family was a retainer of the Kawaguchi family. If the retainer tried to seize the property of the head of the family, the Kawaguchi family, such a thing would also affect the reputation of the Kawaguchi family. The Kawaguchi family was one of the great nobles of the water country. If the matter was spread, the label of not being strict with subordinates and not knowing how to judge people would be inevitable, which would damage the reputation of the Kawaguchi family in the water country. Murayama Yudo bowed and saluted while kneeling, and said in a deep voice, "Keeping secrets is the first quality of a ninja, please rest assured, madam. Thank you so much. Thank you for your hard work, please go back. If necessary, I will entrust the Hidden Mist village again." Mrs. Kawaguchi bowed and saluted while kneeling, and after she finished speaking, she took the young master beside her and stood up and left. After watching Mrs. Kawaguchi and the young master leave, Wuxin touched Yudo Murayama beside him and asked uncertainly, "Teacher, is our mission completed now?" After watching Mrs. Kawaguchi and the young master leave, Yudo Murayama stood up from the mat. The Oikawa family is Mrs. Kawaguchi's family and also a retainer of the Kawaguchi family. Since the client said we have completed the mission, let's stop here. After hearing what Yudo Murayama said, Wuxin understood the situation. The mission content includes investigating the attackers and clearing them out, which is also considered a condition for completing the mission. It is probably because Mrs. Kawaguchi is worried that Wuxin and other ninjas will eliminate her family, the Oikawa family, in order to complete the mission as soon as possible, so she announced that the mission is completed, the money will be paid normally, and the ninjas are asked to go back and keep it secret. Yes. After a little thought, Wuxin followed Yudo Murayama's steps. The two hurried along the way and soon arrived at the Canyon River mouth mining base. After explaining the mission to the mine base manager, they went to the sentry at the west gate of the base to meet with Mai Kazuna and Shui Lian. Murayama Yudo announced the end of the mission to the two, which surprised Mai Kazuna and Shui Lian. When the two learned that it was Wuxin who killed the attacking samurai and obtained the samurai's secret information, which made the client Mrs. Kawaguchi announce the end of the mission, they looked at Wuxin with some novelty. As for why Mrs. Kawaguchi announced the end of the mission, Murayama Yudo skipped it in one sentence without detailed explanation. In short, the mission is completed in one sentence. Okay, if we set off now, we can return to the village before dark. The service at Tono Hot Spring at night is very considerate. As a reward for your ability, the teacher decided to invite you to take a hot spring bath at night. The B-level mission was completed in 2 days, and Murayama Yudo was in a very good mood. Going to Tono Hot Spring again. Shui Lian was a little bored after hearing the words. Wuxin was somewhat confused by the tone of Shui Lian's words. He guessed that they might relax by taking a hot spring bath after completing each mission. After listening to the mission of Yudo Murayama, Mikazuna glanced at Wuxin inadvertently, with a hint of fear in her eyes. Hot springs can help ninjas wash away their fatigue. Let's go. After the mission, Yudo Murayama's seriousness seemed to disappear. He looked lazy and walked at an unhurried pace. Wuxin and the other two followed Yudo Murayama and set off to return to Kurigakure. The team was silent all the way. When it was almost dark, the four arrived at the gate of Kurigakure. After entering the village, they went straight to Higashino Hot Spring. At Higashino Hot Spring, the four had dinner and soaked in the hot spring, enjoying the hot water and relaxing. After resting in the hot spring, several people went home, and only Yudo Murayama stayed overnight. Wuxin also completed the first mission of his ninja career. The process was simple, which made Wuxin more confused about the so-called ninja. Early morning, Wuxin woke up from the bed, completed the daily training homework in the morning as usual, and went out to the mission hall. It was already night when he came back yesterday, and today he went to report and receive the commission. The reward for B-level tasks is generally between 80,000 and 200,000 taels. The captain takes 40%, and the remaining 60% is divided among 3 team members. Wuxin came to the mission hall and met with the guiding ninja Yudo Murayama, as well as team members Mikazuna and Shuilian, and went straight to the second floor to report. We set off the day before yesterday, and today is only the 3rd day, right? It's really excellent to finish it so quickly. The elder Yuanshi still looked old and frail. After listening to Yudo Murayama's report, he praised him and gave him a financial bill. With this bill, he can go to the Ministry of Finance to receive the commission. It's all because of Master Yuanshi's good command. Murayama Yudo was very respectful to the elder Master Yuanshi. After taking the bill, he bowed and turned to leave. Wuxin, wait a minute. Wuxin just turned around and followed Murayama Yudo. Hearing Master Yuanshi's words to keep him, he was a little surprised. Murayama Yudo paused, looked back at Wuxin, and then strode away. Although Mikazuna and Shuilian were a little surprised, they didn't ask much and followed Murayama Yudo away. Master Yuanshi. Wuxin and Master Yuanshi were left in the office. Wuxin looked at Master Yuanshi with a puzzled look. Child, I have some bad news to tell you. While Master Yuanshi was talking, he took out a thick file bag from the drawer and put it on the table. Bad news. Wuxin frowned slightly, and his heart was even more puzzled. The old face of the Yuanshi seemed to be hesitant to speak, and he said in a deep voice. Child, your father Wu Yu and your mother Hayata Xiaofang died in the line of duty. Ah, Wuxin was shocked when he heard this, and finally, he understood what the so-called bad news was. He felt dizzy, his body was a little weightless, and he began to stagger. Swish. The old Yuanshi, who was sitting on the seat, appeared beside Wuxin in an instant, and put his right hand on Wuxin's shoulder to help Wuxin stabilize his body. Wuxin couldn't help but have mist in his eyes. He couldn't believe this thunderbolt news. The mist in his eyes quickly turned into tears and slid down from the corners of his eyes. Especially the parents of the Jonin level, they are Wuxin's support. Although in his impression, they have never smiled at Wuxin and are a little neurotic, Wuxin can feel their love for him. Strict ninjutsu teaching may be too harsh for real children. But this kind of teaching is exactly what Wuxin needs. The so-called strictness is just to hope that Wuxin can grow up as soon as possible. Who can have a smile on his face living in a place like the Hidden Mist Village? Wuxin asked with a trembling voice. My father and mother are both auxiliary ninjas. How could they die in the line of duty? A trace of grief appeared on the old face of the master. Child, this mission is very important, and the enemy we encountered is too powerful. We suffered heavy losses, and the ninjas who died in the line of duty are not just your parents Wu Yu and Hayata Xiaofang. The master sighed heavily at the end, and then his expression suddenly became serious and said. Although they died in the line of duty, they are all heroes of the Hidden Mist Village. They ensured the progress of the mission. Wuxin is an adult soul that does not belong to this world after all. Although he is extremely sad, he still keenly perceives a lot of information from the words of the master. The mission is important, the enemy is powerful, the losses are heavy, and there are many ninjas who died in the line of duty. A-level missions are generally top secret, and below B-level, there is still room for discussion or help. A-level missions are absolutely high confidentiality missions. B-level missions can be accepted by those who have reached the level of chunin. However, many special jonins can only participate in missions above A-level or high-risk S-level. Wuxin understood that his parents must have carried out top-secret missions above A-level or S-level. Master Yuanshi, may I ask who is the ninja who killed my parents? Wuxin knew that he could not spy on the details of the mission, but it was still within the scope of permission to understand the enemy's intelligence. Child, the enemy is a ninja from the Hidden Leaf village of the Land of Fire. Just remember this. Master Yuan patted Wuxin on the shoulder, picked up the bulging envelope from the table, and put it in Wuxin's hand. Wuxin took the heavy envelope, tears in his eyes full of resentment, and asked in a trembling voice. You don't even know the name of the enemy who killed my parents. No, child, it's meaningless to know the name. Master Yuan looked sad, and there was a hint of helplessness. Master Yuan, please tell me the name of the enemy. Master Yuan looked at Wuxin who was asking questions, hesitated for a moment, sighed, and said faintly. That person is the legendary ninja, Konoha White Fang. Konoha White Fang. Wuxin, who heard the name of his enemy, had a flash of anger in his eyes, and the vague memories of his previous life gradually became clear. Konoha's White Fang Hitaki Tsukumo, Hitaki Kakashi's father, was a legendary figure in his impression, but he walked into Wuxin's real life and killed Wuxin's parents. Wuxin is now 9 years old and is in the same class as Momochi Zabuza. Momochi Zabuza and Hitaki Kakashi are of similar age. Logically, Hitaki Tsukumo should have died from the rumors of Konoha at this time. Wuxin remembered the words of the master just now. His parents and many Kurigakur ninjas died in the line of duty, but they ensured the progress of the mission. There are even rumors that if you meet Konoha's White Fang, you can give up the mission directly without being punished. This time, the Kurigakur ninjas met White Fang and did not give up the mission. Although there were heavy casualties, the mission was not a failure. Thinking of the death of Hitaki Tsukumo, Wuxin couldn't help but think. It is a very rare event that Konoha White Fang's mission was not completed. Could this legendary ninja have been slandered by rumors and committed suicide because of this mission? The master beside him saw Wuxin muttering something after hearing the name of Konoha White Fang. His eyes were dull, his face became more kind, and he touched Wuxin's little head. Child, Konoha's White Fang is a powerful ninja. There is even an unwritten rule in various countries that if you meet Konoha's White Fang, you can directly give up the mission without being punished. Wuxin, you are a rare genius in the village, and you are more outstanding than White Fang when he was young. I believe that in the future you will grow up to be a better ninja than White Fang. So, child, don't be too sad, bury your hatred, hide it deep in your heart. Wait until you grow up in the future, and then avenge today. Yes, Wuxin, who was daydreaming, was brought back to reality by the words of the master. After responding softly, his thoughts gradually became confused. According to his vague memory, Hitaki Tsukumo was almost persecuted to death at this time. Ninjas, killing each other, hating each other, and surviving for the mission, the ninja group, according to the traditional definition, is equivalent to tools. What is the meaning of tools hating each other? Does the hammer hate the axe, and the axe hate the shield? Wuxin, who was in a daze, didn't know how he left the mission hall and returned to his home, sitting on the floor at the door. Recalling recent events, he killed his friend with his own hands, and all his classmates died, leaving only one murderer, Zabuza Momochi. The temperament of the ninjas, which is unique to the Hidden Mist village, is mostly cold and neurotic. Although his parents usually look cold and stern, Wuxin can feel that they hope that he can live longer in this cold village. Wuxin, who experienced the graduation massacre, can also understand the twisted love and expectations of his parents as ninjas. Now, the only remaining family affection has disappeared, and Wuxin has no ties in the village. As for the guiding ninja and teammates of the ninja team, they are not familiar enough at present, and they all have the neuroticism and coldness unique to the Hidden Mist village. Wuxin even maliciously thought that if he died in the mission, the village could even omit the pension. Because Wuxin has no relatives, no one will be sad because of Wuxin's death. In this world, being able to live for a long time is the meaning of life. Strength is the basis for ensuring your long-term survival. Wuxin slowly cheered up. Wuxin, who was free of worries, understood his own meaning, which was to live for a long time in this village, at least, to grow up, and his body still had a lot of space. The difference between the power and chakra of a young ninja and an adult ninja is huge. I haven't seen the explosive growth of chakra for growth and development yet, and I am still in the deep. Wuxin came back to his senses and noticed his well-behaved and quiet ninja dog Wonkai lying at his feet, and reached out his hand touched the yellow dog at his feet. Wonkai, my family, you are the only one left. Woof woof. Since Wuxin returned to the courtyard, Wonkai has been following his master Wuxin, but his master ignored him. Wonkai, who noticed his master's mood, stayed by Wuxin's side obediently and quietly until his distraught master came to his senses, and then Wonkai howled twice in response. Hey, Wuxin, your commission. On the courtyard wall, Wuxin instructed the senior ninja Yudo Murayama to climb over the wall and enter the courtyard. He walked straight towards Wuxin with a stack of banknotes in his hand. Teacher Yudo, thank you. Wuxin, who was in a bad state, did not pursue the teacher's mood for climbing over the wall to enter the courtyard, and reached out to take the silver banknotes handed over by the senior ninja Yudo Murayama. Your reward for this mission is 20,000 taels, and you can go to Donye Hot Spring to enjoy 100 hot spring baths. Now, don't be so listless. The always serious and lazy Yudo Murayama smiled rarely on his face. I'm not in the mood for a hot spring bath, teacher. Wuxin's face was pale, with tears on it, and he refused Murayama Yudo's invitation. Murayama Yudo didn't care, and walked to the floor next to Wuxin, not caring about the dirt, and sat down cross-legged, and whispered. Are you sad because your parents died in the line of duty? Wuxin was a little surprised and asked in confusion. Teacher, how did you know? Wuxin had the impression that such a mission should be highly confidential, and it was impossible to reveal the mission situation, not to mention the death of ninjas. Teacher is a senior ninja, and he is well informed. Besides, the village has disclosed some information about this mission. After all, being able to repel Konoha White Fang is exciting news. Murayama Yudo sat cross-legged, his face warm. Maybe. Wuxin had no interest in this so-called exciting news. His parents died in the mission, and they were the ones who paying with their lives. But it inspired others. I understand your feelings, Wuxin. The life of a ninja is so unpredictable. Maybe we'll finish chatting today, and tomorrow, I'll die in a mission. Murayama Yudo had a smile on his face, and he was very indifferent to the matter of life and death. With a smile on his face, Yudo Murayama was very indifferent to life and death. After a slight pause, he continued. Wuxin, there are many ninjas who died in this mission. I remember that there was a classmate of yours named Zabuza Momochi. Zabuza Momochi. Oh, yes. Wuxin couldn't help but sneer when he heard the name of his only classmate Zabuza Momochi. Yudo Murayama's eyes were complicated, and he said in a deep voice. His father, Momochi Upper Ninja, was the top assassination expert in the Hidden Mist village. He also died in this mission. Wuxin was a little surprised. Wuxin didn't know about Zabuza Momochi's situation. I didn't expect that Zabuza was also a descendant of a Jonin and a top assassination expert. After listening to this introduction, you can feel the power of this Momochi Upper Ninja. It seems that Zabuza Momochi and I are in the same boat, huh? Wuxin's tone was a little self-deprecating. Zabuza Momochi went crazy after killing his deskmate in the graduation exam, and then killed all his classmates, wanting to change the exam system by himself. Now think about it, whether Zabuza Momochi is crazy, cruel, or twisted, he is actually a poor victim of the blood mist policy. It seems meaningless to resent him for killing his classmates. Since the end of the graduation exam, Wuxin has not seen Zabuza again, and he doesn't know how Zabuza was dealt with by the village. For this classmate who suffered the same fate, Wuxin's heart loosened, and the interest in murder hidden in his heart suddenly dissipated, and he lost interest in killing him. Seeing that Wuxin's mental state was better, Yudo Murayama breathed a sigh of relief. After learning about the rare large number of ninja deaths in the village, Yudo Murayama noticed the names of Wuxin's parents among the victims. Yudo Murayama, who was worried, climbed over the wall and came to Wuxin's house. As soon as he entered the yard, he saw Wuxin slumped on the ground, looking dazed and absent-minded. The experienced Murayama Yudo's purpose was to chat with Wuxin and serve as a companion. As a person who has experienced it, he knows these things very well. Things have passed, and looking forward to the future is what we should do. Wuxin, do you want to learn ninjutsu that only a Jonin can master? Murayama Yudo, who is in charge of Jonin, knows that the inner desire of the young man at this time is mostly to become stronger. Ninjutsu that only a Jonin can master. Wuxin turned his head and looked at Murayama Yudo in surprise, and became interested. Ninjutsu that only a Jonin can master must be above level B. The level of ninjutsu corresponds to the difficulty of learning. Although the level does not necessarily represent the power, the more difficult the ninjutsu is to learn, the more effects, larger and more complex it is. Wuxin's C-level ninjutsu is already very proficient, and his parents have very few ninjutsu above level B. Wuxin himself doesn't know whether he can learn advanced ninjutsu. Yes, Jonin level ninjutsu. Murayama Yudo got up and walked to the big tree planted in the yard. At this moment, Wuxin has no worries and no sense of security. He is confused and eager to become stronger. However, due to his physical and age limitations, he wants to become stronger but cannot achieve it quickly, which shows his inner suffering and helplessness. For Wuxin at this moment, Yudo Murayama's words are like a beam of light shining into Wuxin's closed heart, soothing Wuxin's anxiety. Wuxin slowly got up and walked behind Yudo Murayama, waiting for teaching. You can vaguely see the traces of being trampled by the soles of your feet. Wuxin, have you completed the training of climbing trees? Yudo Murayama observed the big tree and saw the collapsed mark on the tree that looked like a sole of your foot. The size of the mark judged that it was the foot of a young man. Yudo Murayama understood in his heart why Wuxin could perform C-level ninjutsu that was not suitable for his age, completed the training of climbing trees, and had fine chakra control. Yes, when I was a child, I completed the tree climbing training under the guidance of my father and mother. This is a very interesting training and my favorite sport at that time. Wuxin replied softly. Wuxin, who had just cultivated chakra in his childhood, completed the tree climbing training not long after. It was both interesting and could enhance the experience of chakra. I see, then, have you practiced treading water? Yes, when climbing trees was no longer challenging, my father and mother taught me to practice treading water. Well, it was a very interesting training. Wuxin answered honestly and told everything he knew. I see, I even completed the treading water training. No wonder he can learn so many ninjutsu, he is really a genius. Murayama Yudo was a little emotional. Climbing trees and treading water training. Climbing trees and climbing high has the risk of falling, treading water has the risk of drowning. Since a ninja school teacher takes dozens of students and cannot take care of them, so for safety reasons, these are not taught in general ninja schools. There are many ways to increase chakra control. Climbing trees and treading water are more practical. Generally, after graduating from Genin, they teach Jonin 1 to 3. Chakra has many functions, and rough use can easily lead to chakra waste and dissipation. Strengthening chakra control, saving chakra, and more delicate use of chakra are extremely important for ninjas. After learning about Wuxin's situation, Yudo Murayama touched his chin and thought about the teaching content. After a long silence, he said in a deep voice, Wuxin, you have excellent chakra control. You have also mastered a lot of water escape ninjutsu, but the techniques you have mastered lack offensive techniques. Today, I will teach you an offensive water escape ninjutsu of the Jonin level. As Yudo Murayama said this, he looked around and observed the yard of Wuxin's house. Well, this place is not suitable for performance, otherwise your family will suffer, follow me. Yudo Murayama observed a little, decided to change places, and turned around to leave. Yes, Wuxin answered respectfully, and followed Yudo Murayama with some expectation. The two left the house and walked through the village, coming to a remote forest. There were many wooden stakes with human vital points painted on them. Not far away, there was a stream flowing, making the sound of water. Wuxin, watch carefully. Murayama Yudo stood not far from the stream, and warned Wuxin with a serious face. Yes, Wuxin focused his attention and stared at his teacher Murayama Yudo. Murayama Yudo's body was waving with chakra, and his hands began to form seals. The speed of forming seals was very slow, ensuring that Wuxin could see and remember them clearly. As Murayama Yudo formed seals, he exuded more and more powerful pressure, and the stream beside him seemed to be boiling and bubbles appeared. Finally, after 44 seals, Yudo Murayama, who was maintaining the rooster seal with both hands, shouted, "Water style. Water dragon bullet technique." Accompanied by Yudo Murayama's voice, the water in the stream swirled and rose, and finally gathered into a dragon-shaped creature made of stream water, at least 20 meters long and 2 or 3 meters thick, which was thicker than the water prison that Wuxin could cast. Roar! The water dragon roared and crashed into a large tree in the forest not far away. Boom! With the sound, the tree fell down, and the water dragon shrank by about 1/3 and crashed into another large tree on the side, and with the sound, another tree fell down. Murayama Yudo manipulated the water dragon to smash it wildly. After hitting 4 trees, the water dragon howled and turned into a stream of water, which scattered on the ground. In Wuxin's vague memory, this ninjutsu did not seem to be a special move or a ninjutsu. However, the actual situation is that the water dragon bullet is a ninjutsu of the B-level upper ninjutsu, which is extremely powerful. Wuxin wrote down Murayama Yudo's demonstration of slow hand seals, and was looking forward to it. The water clone technique and water substitute technique that he mastered belong to the confusing and life-saving ninjutsu. The water whip and water prison technique are control and restraint ninjutsu, and the water curtain is a complex defensive ninjutsu. Regarding the offensive ninjutsu, he is indeed lacking. "Wuxin, did you see it clearly?" Murayama Yudo turned his head and asked in a deep voice. In fact, Murayama Yudo felt that Wuxin should find it difficult to master this level of ninjutsu, but he still decided to teach him, so that Wuxin could enter the state of practice and forget the pain of his relatives leaving. "I saw it clearly." Wuxin's little face was very serious. "Okay, I'll explain to you the functions of these seals and the operation of chakra." After Yudo Murayama finished demonstrating the seals, he began to explain ninjutsu in depth. Under Yudo Murayama's guidance, Wuxin quickly understood the functions of those seals and the operation methods of chakra, and memorized them. The seals of ninjutsu are very complicated, but according to the proficiency, personal usage, and adaptation to the environment, they can be deleted from the 44 seals of the water dragon bullet. According to the situation, adjust the seal technique to change the durability of the water dragon, or adjust the size of the water dragon. After listening to Yudo Murayama's detailed explanation, Wuxin was eager to try. "That's about it. Now, you recall and sort out what I just said. If you don't understand, you can ask questions." Yudo Murayama talked for most of the day, and his mouth was dry. "Well, no questions for the time being, let me try it. Practice makes perfect." Wuxin walked to the stream, took a deep breath, and then began to seal with both hands. When practicing ninjutsu, it is not in actual combat. Wuxin's hand seals are not fast, and the chakra fluctuations in his body are running according to the instructions of Yudo Murayama. As Wuxin made hand seals and chakra fluctuations, the flow of the stream in the stream became abnormal, and a small vortex suddenly appeared. After about 15 seconds, Wuxin formed the seal of the rooster with both hands, and the chakra fluctuations of his whole body became more surging. Water escape. Water dragon bullet technique. As Wuxin shouted softly, the vortex of water in the stream rose and condensed into a wide water dragon about 10 meters high and 1 meter thick, with its head held high. Roar! The water dragon roared and crashed into the big tree in the forest next to it. With a loud bang, the big tree fell down, and the water dragon turned into water splashes, falling to the ground, causing a water mark on the ground. The guiding ninja Yudo Murayama, who was watching the show behind Wuxin, had a dull face and opened his mouth wide, and the angle could even fit a duck egg. You succeeded in one go. That doesn't make sense, your chakra, this is impossible." Murayama Yudo was so shocked that his words were a little confused. The level of ninjutsu represents the difficulty of learning, not necessarily the power. As long as the ninja has chakra, the amount and use of chakra controls the power of the ninjutsu, or the size of the ninjutsu. Although Wuxin is only 9 years old, his chakra is refined and his super chakra control makes it possible to perform ninjutsu without any waste of chakra. When many ninjas perform ninjutsu, they often waste a lot of chakra for no reason. If the consumption of ninjutsu is 1, the chakra control of ordinary people often consumes 1.5, or 2, or even 3, or even more. For Wuxin, when performing ninjutsu, there is no extra consumption of chakra. In theory, as long as it is not the kind of ninjutsu that requires a huge amount of chakra to change the environment, Wuxin can learn and master it. Wuxin wiped the sweat from his forehead and heard the words of Yuto Murayama behind him. He whispered, "Teacher, I don't think I have mastered it, right? It's not as good as you can perform it at will." Wuxin is no longer surprised by other people's shock. When his father and mother first started teaching him ninjutsu when he was a child, they were often like this. "Asshole, I have practiced the water dragon bullet technique for many years to reach this level. You have just learned to condense the water dragon and perform it successfully, do you understand?" Yasuto Murayama lost his composure. As a senior ninja, he has achieved today's achievements after years of hard training and missions. He originally wanted to use advanced ninjutsu to spur Wuxin and let Wuxin indulge in practice, but he learned it in less than an hour. "Is this a genius? In comparison, when I was your age, I was simply mediocre and incompetent." Murayama Yongren held his forehead with his right hand, a little depressed, and sighed deeply at the end. "Teacher Yongren, this is all due to your good teaching, and I am just a little bit more capable in learning." Wuxin's words were modest, and what he said was true. Murayama Yongren's teaching was very detailed, and he happened to have a strong learning ability. "Ah, that's true." Murayama Yongren was flattered by Wuxin, and it seemed that it was true after thinking about it carefully, and his depressed mood after being hit was reversed a little. "Wuxin, although you have successfully performed the water dragon bullet technique, you still need to practice diligently to reach the point where you can use it proficiently." Murayama Yongren resumed his teacher's posture and assigned Wuxin a practice assignment. "I understand. This ninjutsu is my current limit. In a short period of time, I can only perform it twice on the same scale." Wuxin replied respectfully. At the same time, for this ninjutsu that he had just learned, considering the consumption of chakra, he had already judged the limit of what he could perform. "I am very pleased that you have such an understanding of yourself. However, I have more requirements for you than this. Wuxin, show me the water curtain tent technique that you have mastered." "Yes," Wuxin replied, then took a deep breath, made simple adjustments, and quickly formed seals with both hands. In less than 3 seconds, Wuxin glared and shouted, "Water style. Water curtain tent." Splash. In the stream, a small stream of water rolled out and shot forward. After the water stream jumped 5 meters, it burst and turned into a water curtain, and then scattered on the ground, leaving a water mark on the ground. Creating a torrent attack, then turning it into a water curtain defense, and leaving the water surface, it looks like a very good ninjutsu. Murayama Yuto commented on the water curtain tent ninjutsu performed by Wuxin, and then said, "But I feel that this ninjutsu should not be like this. The torrent water cannon attack is a good attack, and suddenly it becomes a water curtain defense. It is really unexpected. You should think more about the use of this ninjutsu." "Ah, yes." After hearing what Murayama Yuto said, Wuxin thought about the water curtain art. It was indeed both offensive and defensive, which was a bit out of place. The source of ninjutsu was recorded and compiled by his father. He didn't know where he got the ninjutsu from through mind-reading techniques, and he couldn't even test the learning level. The focus of defensive ninjutsu should be centered around the characteristics of defense. "Come, I'll teach you another ninjutsu and see if you can master it." Murayama Yuto walked forward and came to the stream. Wuxin had already performed 2 ninjutsu, and his chakra was running low. Murayama Yuto decided to let Wuxin hit a wall in learning ninjutsu, so as to hit his inner arrogance. "Look, a defensive water ninjutsu of the Jonin level, creating a high-speed flowing water wall to resist all attacks, especially against fire ninjutsu." Murayama Yuto made seals with both hands. This time, the speed of making seals was much faster than the last time he demonstrated. After about 15 seals, Murayama Yuto's eyes widened, and his hands formed the unknown seal, and he shouted, "Water ninjutsu. Water array wall." The stream water made a sound, and turned into a thick water wall about 5 meters high and 50 centimeters thick. Unlike the calm water surface, the water wall was like a waterfall, flowing and washing without stopping. Wu Xin looked carefully, and the last seal was the unknown seal, which is a panacea among the 12 seals. The water wall made has the characteristics of fast flow and washing. Not to mention the thickness, this flowing and washing characteristic alone can resist most of the attacks of ninja tools. It is indeed a powerful defensive water ninjutsu. Did you see it clearly? The water wall lasted for 5 seconds, and Murayama Yudo lifted the ninjutsu and turned to ask. Look carefully, 16 seals. Wuxin answered seriously. Well, compared with the water dragon bullet technique, the rooster seal is needed to strengthen the impact. The unknown seal can adjust the characteristics of ninjutsu at any time by controlling chakra. This is the use of water in nature, you can try it. This time, Murayama Yudo's explanation was much simpler, not as detailed as the water dragon bullet technique. After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked to the stone pier beside him and sat down. Wuxin looked at Murayama Yudo, waiting for the teacher's detailed explanation of the chakra operation line. Murayama Yudo's ninjutsu teaching this time was too crude. When he met Wuxin's eyes, he couldn't help but feel embarrassed and continued to explain. It's just that the way chakra runs is also explained very crudely. After speaking, he flicked his hands at Wuxin, indicating that Wuxin can start practicing. Wuxin nodded, recalled the seal-making techniques of Yudo Murayama in his mind, thought about the functions of those seals, as well as the consumption and operation of chakra, and after confirming all the knowledge points, he began to slowly make seals with both hands. Wuxin made seals very slowly, 2 seals per second, and in about 8 seconds, Wuxin made the seal of no return with both hands, and shouted. Water escape. Water array wall. The calm stream stirred up a water wall about 1 meter high and 10 centimeters thick. Although the water wall was small, the flow rate was extremely fast, like a waterfall flowing and washing at high speed. Yudo Murayama on the side had his eyes wide open. He didn't expect that Wuxin, who had a poor chakra amount at the moment, could perform it again in his crude explanation. Yudo Murayama was also prepared to give a detailed explanation and teaching again after Wuxin failed to practice, so as to brush up his dignity and erudition as a teacher, but he didn't expect. Genius, terrifying. Yudo Murayama was a little absent-minded and started to be stunned. Wuxin recalled the situation of the ninjutsu he had just performed in his mind, and realized that it was because of his chakra that the water wall was weak. If he rested for a while and waited for the chakra to recover to the best state, the water array wall should be able to reach half of Murayama Yudo's level. In Wuxin's vague memory, he remembered that the second-generation Hokage in Konoha seemed to have very few hand seals about water escape, and the hand seals he made were not even the hand gestures among the 12 hand seals. However, he had just learned and mastered it, and there was still a lot of room for optimization in the future. After becoming proficient, he would adjust the hand seals and chakra appropriately and transform them into a ninjutsu method suitable for his own combat. Teacher, I don't have enough chakra, so it's a bit difficult to perform. Wuxin came back to his senses and reported his training experience to Murayama Yudo, who was sitting on a stone pier. Wuxin, who hadn't received Murayama Yudo's recovery for a long time, turned around with some doubts and looked at Murayama Yudo. Murayama Yudo had a calm face and his pupils were scattered, as if his thoughts were far away and he had gone AWOL. Wuxin walked to Murayama Yudo and was surprised to see that Murayama Yudo was still slacking off. The Jonin who claimed to be omnipotent and whose ninjutsu could not be flawed could be so unprepared, which refreshed Wuxin's cognition. Hey, Yudo-sensei. Ah, Wuxin. Ahem, that's right. How is your training going? Murayama Yudo seemed to be awakened, and after coming to his senses, he realized that he was teaching Wuxin to practice. Chakra is lacking, so it's difficult to perform. After the chakra is restored, it should be able to perform normally. Wuxin answered honestly. Oh, well, not bad, very good. Murayama Yudo nodded, and complimented him in a perfunctory manner. After that, Murayama Yudo's expression suddenly became serious and asked. The ninjutsu I just taught is the water array wall. Wuxin was a little confused when he heard Murayama Yudo's question. He reached out and gently touched the back of his head, and didn't know how to answer. Sorry, I just thought of something else and was distracted. Without waiting for Wuxin to answer, Murayama Yudo looked a little apologetic, as if he realized that he had embarrassed himself in front of his students. Murayama Yudo touched his nose, smiled, and said softly, Wuxin, what do you think of the village's blood mist policy? Quote, Blood mist policy. Very bad. Wuxin was somewhat puzzled as to why Yuto Murayama suddenly asked about the village's policy and answered his opinion truthfully. Very bad. Ninjas are like weapons, they are tools of the village. The village needs strong ninjas to protect it in order to survive for a long time, which is the mission of every Kurigakure ninja. What do you mean by very bad? Yuto Murayama looked at Wuxin, with a little scrutiny in his eyes, which made Wuxin feel a little inexplicable pressure. Ninjas, tools. This is an idea from many years ago. Before the village was established, ninjas were tools. Now, the village has been established for 45 years, almost 46 years. Ninjas are still tools, isn't this idea a bit outdated? Quote. Wuxin didn't know the purpose of Murayama Yuto's question, and answered his opinion on the blood mist truthfully. This kind of killing between classmates is simply ignorant and corrupt. Wuxin's parents died in the mission, and the only classmate left was the murderer Momochi Zabuza. Wuxin actually had no ties in the village, and even had the idea of leaving the village to travel. Outdated. Humph. Your thoughts are really weird and dangerous. Murayama Yuto, who had just been smiling, had a serious face and exuded a bloodthirsty aura. The murderous aura was like a ninjutsu, causing waves in the forest and rippling the stream. What a strong murderous aura. Murayama Yuto used up my chakra, is he trying to kill me? Under the suffocating murderous aura, Wuxin's face turned pale in an instant, and he was panicked, and his steps involuntarily retreated. Although he knew that all the Jonins were strong, he didn't expect them to be so much stronger than the teachers of the ninja school. Companions killing each other is an ignorant and outdated policy. Wuxin didn't understand why Murayama Yuto wanted to kill him, but Wuxin, who understood the village's policies, didn't believe that Murayama Yuto dared to kill the village ninjas for no reason. You are still stubborn when you are about to die. Murayama Yuto shouted angrily, and his figure sitting on the stone disappeared. At a speed that Wuxin couldn't detect with his naked eyes, he instantly appeared in front of Wuxin and stretched out his right hand to slap Wuxin. Wuxin's mind was blank, he closed his eyes, and waited for his fate. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Wuxin's shoulder was gently patted, and Wuxin, who closed his eyes and waited for death, felt the touch on his shoulder and slowly opened his eyes. The face of the murderous ninja Murayama Yuto was very gentle, and he gently patted Wuxin's shoulder and whispered. You are right, the blood mist policy is a pedantic and outdated policy. Wuxin's forehead was full of sweat, his face was pale, and without the suffocating murderous pressure, Wuxin felt his feet a little weak and half squatted on the ground. At the same time, Wuxin was a little frightened by Murayama Yuto's mood swings. Wuxin, you are the most talented ninja I have ever seen in my many years of ninja career. What is even more precious is that you reject the blood mist policy. Murayama Yuto spoke slowly, squatted down, looked into Wuxin's eyes, showed a shy smile, and whispered. Scared? Well, as a genius, you shouldn't behave like this, hee. Wuxin half squatted and rested for a while, and felt much better. Looking at Murayama Yuto's smile, he couldn't feel the slightest warmth, and thought to himself. This is a moody person, I was really careless and used up all the chuck pull. How could a ninja trained by the Hidden Mist village not be neurotic? Compared to the coldness of other ninjas, Yuto Murayama seems to have a little warmth that is different from others, but that's all. Quote. Wuxin's inner thoughts turned, and he said, I'm just a rookie ninja who has just graduated from the ninja school for less than a month. It's normal that I can't resist the pressure of the senior ninja. Haha, not bad, you know yourself. Yasuto Murayama smiled, exuding lazy warmth, as if the murderous man just now was not him. Wuxin, you are a genius, and a very smart one. More importantly, the blood mist policy has not made you lose your human feelings, which is more precious than your classmate Momochi Zabuza. Murayama Yuto's face became a little serious, and after a slight pause, he continued. In the village, there are many Jonins who are dissatisfied with the blood mist policy. Of course, the thoughts of Jonins are hidden very deeply. In the past, I was a ninja who only knew the mission and completed the mission I should perform as a Jonin. Later, I became a Jonin in charge, responsible for teaching Genin students. Many Genin students lost their lives in my mission to help me complete the mission. Originally, I didn't care about the lives of Genin. They were just consumables prepared for the mission. Until my wife became pregnant, I began to have a different view. Murayama Yuto's serious face seemed to think of something, and revealed a smile with a kind glow. He smiled and continued. Looking at the little life growing in my wife's belly, I began to reflect. As a ninja, I don't want my child to embark on this path in the future. But my wife and I only know some skills to kill people. If we don't become ninjas, what else can we do? However, in my many years of mission career, I learned about the fire country and saw a situation different from our village. In the fire country Konoha village, people in that village live in peace, and ninja students don't have to kill each other after graduation. Genin starts with simple D-level missions. Until the genin adapts to the ninja career, the difficulty of the mission will gradually increase. This allows the ninjas to get more time to grow, which is also the reason why the fire country Konoha village is the strongest. In view of this, I began to think, if our village is like Konoha village, then, will the genin live better? Without talent if you are not a genin, then you can stop at the career of a genin, which is also a good way to live. There is no need to become a chunin or a jonin, and live in meaningless fighting all year round. The more genin there are in the village, the more descendants of ninjas there will be. Among them, there will be some geniuses like you occasionally, one of whom is enough to be 100 people. So, in a sense, the power of the village is actually enhanced. Quote. Wuxin heard the words and looked at Yuto Murayama in surprise. He didn't expect that there was such a thought in the hidden mist village. Teacher Yuto, is it because your child is about to be born? You don't want your child to go through the ninja graduation exam, so you start to think about the pros and cons of the blood mist policy. Hehe, this is just one of the reasons. Boy, sometimes don't be too smart, okay. Murayama Yuto had an embarrassed expression on his face, and at the end, he patted Wuxin on the shoulder. Teacher, you said that many jonin in the village dislike and reject the blood mist policy, so why don't you jointly advise the Mizukage? Quote. Wuxin's fear and alienation caused by Yuto Murayama's mood swings disappeared. After a heart-to-heart chat, he understood Yuto Murayama's thoughts. Our representative, Lord Yagura, has been working hard for this, and the third Mizukage also knows the thoughts of the jonin. But the third Mizukage may have his own considerations, so he has not yet cancelled this pedantic blood mist policy. Moreover, after Lord Yagura made a suggestion to the third Mizukage, we found that there seemed to be an Anbu monitoring as jonin who wanted to change the blood mist. Therefore, our ideas only stayed in our minds, and we dared not ask the Mizukage for orders in a big way, lest. Yushi Murayama paused and did not say anything. If you violate the main ideology and policy of the supreme leader Mizukage, you can only be purged. Even if Yuto Murayama did not say it, Wuxin could guess it. This pedantic policy should indeed be cancelled. Teacher Yuto, I will work hard for it. Quote. Wuxin didn't know how to comfort Murayama Yuto, so he could only express his ambition and loyalty. Murayama Yuto smiled and said, haha, there is no need for genin to fight for this. With Lord Yagura, I believe that the blood mist policy will be cancelled soon. You genin, just forget the pain of the blood mist. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.